In the midst of the darkness, God has sent us His light. There's no need to be anxious. He will lead in our fight. If you've been called by the Savior, you will surely win. All you have to do is listen. Let your soul take it in.
I have been, as much as humbly possible, thinking about the 1,000-year reign of peace, the end of the tribulation period, the return of the Lord Jesus Christ, that when the Lord Jesus Christ returns, it'll be when there is no more death in the earth, as we have stated earlier, and it will be His major presentation and representation will be through the Hamites, but primarily a mixed multitude of Japheth and Shemites together. And I've been thinking a lot about what that's going to look like without having prior knowledge. I do know that there'll be 1,000 years where Satan will be bound by an angel and in a bottomless pit. So last time we were together, in fact, it was last week we were together, I was teaching about Levi because I want to explain to you about the 27 books of the Bible, 27 chapters rather, of the book of Levi, how it all got started. We saw that he was born the third son of Jacob and Leah. Leah was a woman that obviously that Jacob had not planned on marrying, but did marry, and I actually probably fell in love with her afterwards. And I'm trying to help us to begin to understand, to get ourselves ready as much as possible. And I say this with all kinds of reservations that people probably look at me in all different kinds of ways, talking about we're going to live in the 1,000-year reign of peace. We're going to see the return of Jesus. We're going to see that angel come down from heaven with that great big chain in his hand, and we're going to see him tie up the devil and throw him in a bottomless pit. You know, you talk like that while the Bible says it's going to happen. Anybody claiming to be a part of that process, you look at them a little bit cross-eyed. And I understand that. So to some degree, I have to explain that. But I want to do something tonight. I want to read to you why the book of Levi, beyond the fact that that Leah gave birth to Levi, and that they were separated as a priestly tribe. I want to also now give some historical background context with the understanding, let's agree together that potentially we may see the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. I believe I will. We will see the time when the devil is thrown in the bottomless pit. There'll be no more death. And for 1,000 years we'll rule and reign. There'll be just a selected group of people on the planet called the elect. Will we be governed in that period of time? Because there'll be no president of any nation there left. There won't be the president of Russia. There won't be the chancellor or the prime minister of Israel or England. There'll be no dictators. There'll be no presidents. There'll be no parliaments. There'll be no governments. There'll be no courts in the 1,000-year reign of peace. All those governments will be dissolved. Although there'll be no marching armies, there'll be no red China. All of that will be completely dissolved in the 1,000-year reign of peace. The only people that will be left will be those who are part of the elect. How will they be governed? What will be the method by which those are the left? Because China will, Russia, France, Germany, Brazil, Australia, Spain, Mexico, America, all of that is completely wiped out, and the leadership completely wiped out and null and void, and having absolutely no effect whatsoever on the elect, people that are left. And they'll be all kindreds and tongues, mind you. There'll be Hamite people, which are black people. There'll be Japheth people, which are white people. There'll be Shemite people, which were Jewish. And they will most probably speak various languages. But what will govern them? What would govern them? And there'll be no capital of sin. There'll be no prisons, no jails. None of that will happen or be. It'll all be destroyed. All the jails will crumble in the earthquakes. So I want to give you the opportunity to think about that, because I have, and then I want you to think along with me about how do we manage ourselves in the 1,000-year reign of peace. Again, people look at that such a subject matter and look at me a little bit cross-eyed. But I want to tell you what Moses did. Moses set up the book of Leviticus, or he wrote the book of Leviticus, and he set up the Levitical house of the priesthood to demonstrate management of the people. Once they came out of Egypt, they had no king, they had no pharaoh, they had no anything political, they had no marching army, they had no structure. When they came across the Red Sea, they had been in Egypt, they had been under the Egyptian structure. Once they got freedom from Egypt, they had no structure. So what was the structure? So Moses, in the book of Leviticus, more than any place else, outlines the structure. In the book of Leviticus, he outlines the structure of government, the structure of how they are to conduct themselves. And in the book of Numbers, he then outlines the various segments of the land, and according to their tribes and their various numerical beings. But a sort of and I won't call it a fluke thing, probably be blasphemous if I call it a fluke, but an interesting happened that caused Levi to inherit the government structure of the children of Israel into the wilderness and into eternity. A very interesting thing happened that did not have to happen. And the reason why this process fell to Levi was not that it was a normal structure. I want to read something to you from the book of Leviticus that will introduce this. The Bible says in Leviticus chapter 10, and Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron. Now Aaron, of course, as you know, was Moses' brother. He was 2 years older than Moses, and he had pretty much set up as the religious order, the structure of the way the Jews were to conduct themselves. Moses was the prophet talking to God all the time. And Aaron had two sons. One was named Nadab, and the other was Abihu. And then, of course, in the tradition of things, the son will follow in the priestly role of his father Aaron, and they were doing that. The Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took either of them his censer and put fire therein and put incense thereon and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he commanded them not. And there went out a fire from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. Then Moses said unto Aaron, this is it that the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come nigh me, and before all the people I will be glorified. And Aaron held his peace. In other words, Aaron was ticked off that God killed both of his boys. It was the scenario was something like this. This pulpit, right? And this is the holy place. This is the place to offer sacrifices to God, this pulpit, right? And Aaron and Abihu, who were Aaron's, Nadab rather, and Abihu, who were Aaron's sons, came to the pulpit and gave an offering. They used the censer and the fire, but that which they offered was blasphemous, and it was labeled in the Bible as strange fire. And they were standing in the pulpit, as it were, and God killed them. God sent a fire out of heaven and killed both of them right there in the altar, in the face of all the people. Saw them die. Crisp, they were burned right then. They wouldn't have given the chance to repent. God killed them right there in the pulpit. Well, I'm always concerned when I come up here. And Aaron was a bit upset that God did that. but he held his peace. He didn't say anything to Moses. Moses didn't say it. It was God's will that these two boys that were supposed to be following their father's footsteps, Aaron, offered strange fire. They did something blasphemous, and they were ungodly men. They were not men of God. So at that point, there were no inheritors of Aaron's responsibility as the priest. His sons were dead. He had no further sons. And so what God did, that's when Levi was chosen. Now we're going to discover that in the book of Numbers, that Levi, who was of the tribe, Aaron was of the tribe of Levi, but it was at this point that God chooses Levi to head the whole priesthood, to head the government, to be head of the medical department. Remember when Jesus dealt with the 10 lepers, that they were told to go and show themselves to the priests, because the priests were in charge of all the medical facilities. The priests were in charge of all the events. So that's how the Levites that we studied last week came to power. They came to power because Aaron's sons were not honorable men. They weren't righteous men. They weren't good men. And God killed them in the pulpit. So we want to look at that here tonight. And if I could just turn in the book of Leviticus, the third book of the Bible, that it's 27 chapters. And I want to, what I'm going to do here in this segment is, again, raise the question. Okay, let's say, for instance, that you are believing, maybe not believing, but hoping that within the next period of time of years, 10, 25, 7, 2, that Jesus returns and you're one of the elect. How do we govern ourselves? There'll be no presidents of America. There'll be no America. There ain't gonna be no Israel. There will be ATLAH, but there'll be no Moscow. There'll be no Paris. There'll be no Berlin. There'll be no London. There'll be no Sao Paulo. There'll be no Sydney. There'll be no Johannesburg nor Cape Town. There'll be none of those. All of that will be history. There will be ATLAH. There will be ATLAH. So how do we govern ourselves? And not that we couldn't wait until that period to have that happen, but Moses in his wisdom, when he brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, he in the mountain and the wilderness set up all the laws and the structure, and he put Levi, the son of Jacob and Leah, in charge of, pretty much in charge of the government. Because the priesthood was the government, in charge of medicine, and also in charge of their laws of how they were to respond to one another, how they was, it's in the book of Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13, that says no hanky-panky between two men. That two men shall not lie with one another. No hanky-panky. It's in the book of Leviticus that you find that, right? So it's Levi. Now Levi's not writing this, Moses is writing it, but it's put in the book of Leviticus is like the Constitution of the United States of America, covering all of its laws, but not just some of its laws. In our American laws, we have the Federal Drug Administration, we have the Center for Disease Control, we have the state laws, we have the Constitution, we have the federal courts, we have the Congress, we have that. Well, if you look at the book of Leviticus, contained in the book of Leviticus, the writing of Leviticus, is all of the setup of the government, similar to what we have here in American government or any other government. And in that government that was set up by Leviticus, actually Moses set it up, the Levites became the prime ministers of it, if you will. God also gives dietary laws, and that's what I come to talk to y'all about tonight. Probably going to lose most of y'all as members after this point, but I come to talk to you about the dietary laws. In the book of Leviticus, Moses writes, man shall do no hanky-panky with another man, be put to death. In the book of Leviticus, man shall not lie with his daughter, or Son shall not lie with his mother-in-law. All the laws regarding marriage, regarding family, regarding military, which we're going to get to in the book of Numbers, that the book of Leviticus is the constitution of the nation of Israel. Does that constitution still affect and apply to us once we go into the 1,000-year reign of peace? The answer is absolutely yes. But I want to look specifically not at the medical laws, because a priest effectively is a doctor. Jesus, when Jesus healed a blind man, he told him, go, do what you're going to do. He healed a woman with the issue of blood. He said to her, thy faith that made thee whole. He raised Lazarus from the dead. But when he healed the 10 lepers of a medical disease, he didn't have the final authority. Jesus didn't. He didn't have the final authority of the healing of the 10 lepers. He spoke to them healing, but the law, the Levitical law required that Moses wrote, the law required that they go and show themselves to the priest before they could be declared clean. They were in a quarantine such as what we have with coronavirus now. They were quarantined off. They could not, mingle among other people because they were diseased. So in order to get a certificate to find themselves back in the midst of the population of people, they had to go and show themselves to the priest. So everybody knows that Jesus healed the 10 lepers, but that wasn't the conclusion of all things. Jesus told them, go show yourself to the priest. And only one came back to say thank you. So the priest had mega power in the structure of the new government, of the new nation born in the wilderness. Mega power. So I want to tell you as well that it wasn't just the medical procedures that needed to be overseen by Levites. Moses wrote about the dietary laws, about what we should eat and what we should not eat, what we should wear. We can't wear silk and wool together in the same garment. Now, if I put on a silk tie and a wool suit, I'm still good to go. But you shouldn't make a suit with silk and wool. If that's the case, and that's forbidden. Why, I don't know. That a woman gets married, a man, she has to be a virgin, according to Levi, and the proof that she's a virgin, she has to bleed when they have their first sexual intercourse. Then they got to take the sheet that she bled on and bring it to the father of the man, of the daughter. Yeah, all that's in Leviticus, all that stuff. But I don't want to focus on that just now. Not now. What I want to focus on is your diet, what you eat, which is going to get me in a lot of trouble. All right, so let's get started. All right. And Leviticus chapter 11 is where it all starts. Verse 1, Leviticus chapter 11. And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, speak unto the children of Israel, these are the beasts which ye shall eat, of all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parteth the hoof is cloven-footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that you shall eat. Now let me try to help some of y'all city slickers understand what it is. The hoof is an animal's foot. Now, God made us with 5 toes, so we have 4 separations. But the animal's foot usually is one solid foot, like a horse's foot is one solid hoof, right? But a cow or bull's foot is parted. His part over here, it's split in the middle. So it's a parted hoof. So God says any animal whose hoof is not parted, you can't eat. Like horses, for instance. You're not supposed to eat them because they don't have a parted hoof. And that's what this is. Now I'm not going to do this with every little thing because I want to try to get to some other things as well. Let me quickly run to the swine that has a parted hoof, but the swine doesn't chew the cud. Now, if you ain't never been in the South, you ain't never been around farms, you don't know what chewing the cud is. But cows, if you ever get the opportunity to be around them in a period of time, they'll stand there all day looking like this. Their mouth is constantly going because they're chewing the cud. Actually, what they're doing is they're regurgitating the food that they ate. And once it goes into the stomach, the first stomach, they regurgitate it and chew it even finer. Now, they usually eat it because they're eating quick and they're eating a lot. They eat it quick and they don't chew it real good. So it just goes into the stomach. Then it gets stored. They regurgitate it back up and chew it again and get all the natural juices out of the grass or whatever it is they have eaten. They get all the natural juices out of it by chewing it. And the more they chew it, the finer the juices that they get out. So it's called chewing the cud. And there's some animals that chew the cud, but they don't have a cloven foot, like a camel, for instance. Camels and conies. If you ever see a camel walking, see a camel walk. Okay. They chew the cud, but they don't have a cloven foot, so you can't eat them. All right, so you get the idea where we're going, right? The government of Leviticus. Verse 4, nevertheless, these shall you not eat, them that chew the cud, or them let's get started. Nevertheless, these ye shall not eat, of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, as I just said. Because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof. He is unclean to you. All right, so you can't be having camel soup. How did I make that up? Anyway, verse 5, and the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean to you. So you can't be eating conies either. That's like the llamas, the kangaroos. And the hare, which is the rabbit. And this is going to get Deacon Williams because he was eating rabbit down there in South Carolina. He's eating rabbit back. He was sinning and he didn't know it. Anyway, the hare, because he cheweth the cud, rabbits chew the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean to you. And here's the big one. Dun, 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 dun. And the swine, though he divideth the hoof, and he be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. So that's where I'm going to lose all y'all. Ain't going to be members no more because the Bible says you can't eat that pig. You can't eat that swine. And it gives you the reason why. You know, you probably wouldn't want to kill a camel. Somebody killed a camel and you ate it. You cooked it and told you it was a hamburger, it was a camel burger, you probably would eat it. But you're not supposed to eat the swine. You know, when I was raised up on pork, I was raised up on fatback meat, I was raised up on pork chops, I was raised up on ham hocks, I was raised up on pig feet, heck, I was raised up on pigtails and pig ears. I was raised up on mountain oysters. Well, I didn't eat them, but my parents did. My father did. You don't know what a mountain oyster is. But everything about the pig they would eat except the grunt. I mean, they left nothing. They ate his intestines. The other day, we were looking for some breakfast sausage, and Elizabeth had Margaret Wilson pick up some breakfast sausage for us to eat. And it was chicken apple spice sausage. You ever seen that before? And they take the chicken and they cut it up and they take the apples and they spice it and everything. And they put some sage and all that stuff in there and makes it smell and taste like sausage. And they bought it. And Margaret Wilson bought it and brought it to us. I figured we'd like it, right? But then when Elizabeth read the ingredients, it was all that chicken, apples, and spices all in the, but it was put in a pig's casing. A pig's casing is his intestine. He got a lot of them. And they're very sturdy, the pig's casing. They're the strongest of all casings by intestines. And they just put it there. And when we used to make sausage down in North Carolina, I mean, I used to actually, with my father, my mother, the men made the sausage. We had another thing called pudding, where we take the blood of a pig, right? We take his blood, mix it with some of the scrap meat. We're talking about his blood. We didn't throw nothing away. We take the dried blood of a hog, pig, and mix it with some scrap meat and then grind it all up together, and they call it pudding. And they would take that and then put it in they wash out the hog's intestine, right? Just wash it out, clean all that feces out of it. Then they put the pudding or the sausage, because it would make a nice casing and it would hold, it would be beautiful, right? And then we'd eat it later on. So these people that makes this apple sausage, y'all need to watch out. When I heard it was in that casing, in a pig's, when you cook it all by itself, when you cook the hog's casing all by itself, it's called chitlins. That's what it's called. And chitlins, when you cook them, you know, they start smelling like what they used to carry. But people love them anyway. Put a little hot sauce on them, you're good to go. Chitlins. So this apple sausage was put in a hog's chitlin, right? I said, no, I ain't eating that, not me. I wanted the apple chicken and all that stuff, but no, they put it in the wrong thing. So this is where y'all gonna jump off the boat and leave the church. All right, so I will lose a whole lot of members here tonight in the prayer meeting because y'all don't want to stop eating that swine. But can I share something with you that in the book of Leviticus, again, the priestly book, the book of government, the book that's gonna govern us, we're gonna have to do the same thing when we're going to the promised land. The only animals I ever saw God abuse Jesus, the only animals I ever saw him abuse were swine. In Mark's Gospel, chapter 5, there was a man out there in the Gadarene cemetery full of demons and devils, had 2,000 of them, and Jesus sent the demons into the swine. And the swine ran off the cliff and choked themselves. And never seen Jesus do that to any other animal except the pig. But y'all like to eat him, like that bacon, like that strickling fat. I know what you mean. I know where it's at. Anyway, but let me share something with you. So I've tried to give you the background, and I need to spend more time. You need to understand the concept of what's going on in Moses' mind, and then you need to understand where we're going to go going forward. When we go into the 1,000-year reign of peace, there'll be no president of America. There'll be no prime minister. There'll be none of that going on once we go into the 1,000-year reign of peace. And so there has to be some sort of government. And the government that we have will be the government that guided the children of Israel. And you know, you're not going to be eating swine. But beyond, and I'm going to spend more time on that because I find it myself fascinating. I just like studying it. And I pray that you'll like me teaching it as well. It's fascinating. Here comes the people with no governor, no president, no pharaoh, no marching army, no anything. And they get, and Moses writes all these laws, 641 of them, and then puts the Levites in charge because their sons, Nadab and Abihu, would have been in charge, and Aaron's grandsons would have been in charge after that. But God killed them standing in the pulpit. God killed them right there in the pulpit. You heard me read it there in Leviticus chapter 10. So the reason why God does not want us, I don't know if there's someone at the door that wants me, Deacon Williams. I'll take a moment to address that person at the door. You'll go out there and tell the deacon if someone wants me. So what the Lord does is that he gives us all this authority to Levi. And the reason why you don't want to eat the swine is because his blood is diseased. There's no filtration system to cleanse his blood. And that's why he and the buzzard and the camel and the coney and others are forbidden because their blood system is not cleansed. The life is in the blood. We're good? So the life is in the blood. And it's important that we understand that no matter how much you might like the taste of pork, if you eat an animal whose blood is diseased, then you're going to get the viruses and diseases that the animal has. And that's why you're told, because a pig's blood is diseased, inside of his intestines, maggots grow. Inside of his flesh, his shoulders, his ham are miniature maggots. You ever look at the cooking instructions of ham or pork? They tell you to cook it thoroughly, because if you don't, the maggots that are in it are still alive and you'll be eating maggots. So they figure if you cook it real thorough, you'll kill all the maggots. But a pork chop is full of maggots. So is pork bacon. So is ham. So people who know this tell you just cook it. Cook it so that you can kill all the disease, because the pig's blood system does not filtrate itself to cleanse itself. It has no process of cleansing itself, no way of casting off. Let me ask you another question. You say, well, I ain't gonna stop eating my pork chops. But let me ask you a question. The reason why is not because, God just don't like the swine, that he's unclean, the Bible says. He's full of diseases. So, you want to push ahead and continue to eat swine, right? And I ain't through with that, because I got a whole lot to talk about this diet here tonight. But how many of you are aware that a large number of people think that most of the viruses, including SARS, MERS, the bird flu, the West Nile flu, come from bats, including coronavirus? How many of you have heard some commentary, without a lot of absolutely, stomped down evidence, but there's suspicion among the epidemiologists and people who study these kinds of things that the coronavirus come from bats. Bats hang upside down, right? But they carry a lot of diseases. And they're strange animals. They live in caves. They love darkness. They hang upside down. But their immune system is extraordinary. They can carry literally thousands of years of various viruses and diseases. For instance, a bat, according to some scientists, could have diseases in them that were diseases during the days of Moses in Egypt that have long since West Nile flu or West Nile virus. Well, years ago, it's long since there's been no trace of it in humanity, but it's still in the bat. And if the bat bites you, or you come close to him and a bat breathes on you or just touches you, you got to go to the hospital and get some injections. For 2 or 3 months, you got to get injected, because bats carry diseases from way back when. And a lot of people think this coronavirus has come from bats. In China, that's what they say. So think about a swine, think about a pig who also carries diseases the way you think about a bat. You wouldn't eat a bat, would you? Why? And not that the meat not be tasty. A bat meat might be tasty. I don't know. I never had a bat. But the meat might be tasty. But no matter how tasty it is, knowing that the bat's germ-fighting system allows any virus or germ that is deadly to stay in them, it doesn't affect them. But if you eat it, your body can't deal with that coronavirus or that West Nile or that SMERS or SARS or whatever. Your body can't deal. It'll kill you, but the bat continues to live. Would you still eat pig if you found out that that's why God told you not to eat the swine? Because he's just like the bat. He doesn't have an immune system. He's unclean. Are you still going to eat the pig? Are you still going to eat him? Pork? I mean, you don't have to tell me it tastes good. I ate it all my life. You say, well, you ate it and you're still doing good. Let me tell you something. I stopped eating it 40 years ago. And trust me, if I was still eating it, it would have this effect on me. I would not be standing here with a shining face and a clear speech here tonight. That pork would take its toll on my body. I wouldn't be standing here tonight, with my organs pretty much all working, if I if I ate the maggots that are in swine or chitlins. I don't know why I don't know why people eat chitlins anyway. I mean, I ate them once or twice, but I was never crazy about it. Because I saw what was in them. All the pig's doo-doo was in its intestine. You wash them out, you take it, squeeze it out, then you wash them and you put them in some water and wash them, and then you cook them. I don't know why I want to do that. But people did it and still do it right now. Right this moment. So, I'm spending a lot of time on this, and I'm just getting started. I didn't get to the scallops and to the lobster yet, or the crabs. I'm going to get there. But I'm trying to set the stage to get us ready and get us prepared for the 1,000-year reign of peace. But I can tell you this as well, that even before, and even if you don't make it to the 1,000-year reign of peace, you don't want to eat these foods that can potentially, especially for men and women, that these foods give you high blood pressure. These foods make you more susceptible by 700% of a stroke or heart attack, because when you get pig's blood mingle with your blood, and then you got diseased blood. A Muslim will run from a pig's blood like a prisoner escaping Shawshank Redemption. Muslims don't want to be around no pig's blood. And I ought to be the same with you. Now, I understand, I know you've been eating it all your life. You say, it ain't hurt me so far. I'm going to tell you, the older you get, the more you're going, and I've seen so many preachers die of stroke and heart attack, because that pork will do it to you. That pork will do it to you, where you could normally live a pretty healthy life if you stop with that pork and stop with the foods that the Lord tells you. I spent a lot of time on this because I realize I'm going to lose a lot of members here tonight, because they say, well, I'm going to keep on eating pork. My grandmama lived to be 85 years old and she ate pork. All right. Okay. All right. Go ahead. But the Bible says don't eat it. The Bible says don't eat it. And there's no other animal in the Bible that the Lord gave a thumbs down to except the swine. Don't eat it. And Moses is the one who tells us, writes the law. So we're together on this now. Leviticus, Levi, the book of Leviticus, 27 chapters of the constitution of the new nation that was founded. So when we go into the promised land, or the 1,000-year reign of peace, that what will be our governing? How will we govern ourselves? And I think one of the things that has to happen here in the ATLAH Church is that, and probably, even though, we talk about suffering as the call of our church, and a lot of people don't want to suffer, they want to go to churches where they're going to be told they're going to prosper, you're going to have this, you're going to have that. And not that we don't prosper here. We prosper more than the ones who promise prosperity. They promise prosperity and never see it. But we actually prosper here. But we also suffer. And people don't want that. But I think beyond that is that this church, if you listen to it, listen to the ministry. Let's say you're like Joseph Manning, right? What was his name before? Waverly Marsh. Let's say you're like him, or like Susan Christian, and you've been listening to us for years. And if you just go back and do a composite of all the teachings you've heard me teach, the teachings that we have taught over the years conform with the book of Leviticus. That they conform with the government of God's people, not the government of the United States of America. Just think about all the things you've heard me say, all the teachings. They all conform with the government of God's people. And I think that, someone said to me once, a fellow, he said to me, Pastor Banner, come on, get up off the homosexual, the LGBTQ crowd. Give them a break, I think it was down there where they had that Pulse nightclub shooting down in Orlando, Florida. He said, Pastor Manning, give me, 50 of them got killed in one night. Give them a break, Pastor. But what he failed to understand, and he was obviously unbiblical, unless Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13 gives them a break, I can't, even if I want to give them a break. Even if I wanted to, I can't. What I'd have to say, well, forget about the law for a moment. Forget about what the law says, and I'm just going to say they had a right to go ahead if they like to have sex with men, other men, and they're in a nightclub and all of them having sex with one another, and somebody comes in there and kills all of them. I'm just going to say that the guy that kills them was wrong. But really, the Bible says they deserve to die. The Bible says they shall be put to death. So, beyond, even though we are Christian and church and the blood of Jesus and all of that, essentially, if you think close and analyze what you've heard me say, all the years you've ever heard me preach, conforms to these 27 chapters here in the book of Leviticus. We are governed by the word of God. I understand. I respect the laws of America. I don't go out and, I used to. I don't do that no more. I respect the laws. Occasionally I speed a little bit, and I'm trying to stop doing that. But but my government, my president, my constitution is in here in the book of Leviticus. This is the thing that governs and guides me. So I want to be able to help you understand that. Let's read a little bit further, all right? Verse 7, and the swine, though he divideth the hoof, and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Verse 8, of their flesh shall ye not eat, and their carcass shall you not touch. They are unclean to you. You're not even to touch a dead pig. Don't touch them. That's why the Muslims run. When you want to see a Muslim run, swing some swine blood. Verse 9, these shall ye eat. Now, here we were dealing with the animals, the 6th-day creation people. Now to the 5th-day creation. These shall you eat of all that are in the waters. Whatsoever have fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them ye shall eat. So the criteria of the flesh was them that have a cloven foot, chew the cud, right? You can eat them. Cloven foot, chew the cud. No cloven foot, but chew the cud, can't eat. No cloven foot, no chew the cud, can't eat. So now the criteria, the measurement of what you should get from the waters, from the seas that you should eat, they have to have either fins or scales. The fish must have, from the waters, must have a fin and scales. They must have both. For instance, if you look at a turtle, now I've eaten turtle before. My grandfather used to kill them, and turtle soup. You ever seen it in a restaurant, a French restaurant? The French eat a whole lot of stuff. Eat snails and turtles, and they're crazy over yonder. Anyway, but a turtle doesn't have fins. He's got a shell. And if you cut the 4 pieces of the shell and take him out, he's just a little skinny stuff hanging there, and this great big old shell around it. And when he wants to hide himself, he'll pull himself back inside of his shell, and he'll sit there for 2 or 3 days. If he still think you're out there, he won't show his head or face or feet or nothing. He'll draw everything in, the turtle. But you can't eat him. Why? Because he doesn't have fins and he doesn't have scales. Now, here we go with the other crowd. Because lobsters have at least what one could argue is a fin. They don't. Lobsters don't swim. They can't swim. They're like some of y'all. Lobsters crawl along the bottom of the sea. They crawl along, they 4 feet, they crawl along. They crawl along with their claws, and they crawl along, but they can't swim. You say, lobster, swim. Swim, lobster, get up and float. Swim, they can't swim. Lobsters can't swim. They have though they're in the water, they cannot swim. Neither can crabs. Your crab's got like 16 legs over here, 16 legs over here. Then he got a shell like a turtle, and he walking like, a tarantula. There you go. Crab, but he can't swim. He's in the water, but he can't swim. And God said if he can't swim, don't eat him. And those that can swim, like the turtle, but don't have scales, don't eat them. So now y'all got to figure out where if you're going to give up eating your lobster. If you stayed with me, I thought probably lost half the crowd. Probably everybody's gone now because people love the pork. And they say, I ain't giving up my pork, and my grandmama ate it. Okay. But the Bible says don't do it. Why don't I cook some bat, right? Get some bats from a cave somewhere and let you eat them. You want to eat that too? So God said you can't eat lobster. You can't eat crab. You can't eat scallops. And by the way, you know, the lobster and the crabs, they don't swim. So in order to be able to eat, if you look at other fish, whether the shark or the tuna or the salmon or the red snapper or the trout, they're all swimming around in the water eating each other, right? Whatever they can eat. They see a worm, bam, they go for it. But now, the lobster have very little mobility. Good lobster fishing, you know where the lobsters are, because they ain't gonna move very much. They end up probably in a sunken area that is comfortable to them in terms of the pressure on their bodies and the weight of the water and other things surrounding them, the algae around them. And they usually in the same place, and they incubate, and then the good lobster fishing go to the same place, Maine lobster. They're all up there because of the way Maine itself is a jig-jag sort of a nation, a state, craziest state you ever want to see Maine is. Maine lobster. But they crawl around, and what they do is that whatever the other fish or ships or people drop to the bottom of the sea, that's what they eat. Let's say, for instance, a trawler ship is rolling along and it cleans its toilet out, it drops its toilet, drops all the stuff in the toilet, including the toilet paper and all the other stuff in there. They just drops it out and it goes sinks to the bottom of the sea. Well, lobster are going to have a feast today because that's what they eat. That's what they eat. That's what the crabs eat. You say, well, my goodness, Pastor Manning, that lobster sure tastes good. You been telling me that they eat that. That's what they do. That's what they do. I don't eat them. I never did. But they don't swim, they don't catch, they don't hunt. The only thing they can eat is they find it dead at the bottom of the sea. Now, if a whale dies or a fish dies and lands on the bottom of the sea, they'll eat all of it. But they don't swim like other fish. And so God says, don't eat anything that eats dead carcasses. Don't eat anything that eats feces and dung. Don't eat anything. He said, don't eat it. So people, oh, Lord, here's lobster. Get out of red. Let's go to red lobster. Oh, the red lobster. The red lobster. Here we go to red lobster, everybody. Let's go to red lobster. Red lobster. No, they're unclean. They're unclean. The only fish you're allowed to eat are those who have fins and scales. Now, you know, down in North Carolina, we used to have a lot of eels, right? He looked like a snake, but he swims in the water, you know, but he didn't have any scales on him. He got a skin, but not a scale. And we weren't supposed to eat him, but we ate them too. We would catch him in the water. He looked like a black snake. It'd be long like that, long, skinny little old thing, look like a snake. He's swimming around in the water, and he'd fool around, and he'd bite the hook where you'd catch him and eat him. Eat them too. I used to eat, you know. So here, let's just wrap everything up, and I'll come back again. We'll teach more about this in the time to come about Levi and how he got this extraordinary assignment from God to be over all. Next time when we get back, I'm going to talk to you about he wasn't allowed to go into the army. I'm going to tell you how we got the military, how the marriage, what we call it, where you were deferment. If you were married in age, right now in America, it was years ago, you're married in age, you just got married, the army wouldn't draft you. They got that from Levi. All that good stuff. It's an extraordinary book, Leviticus. Read it on your own, 27 chapters, it's not that long. Extraordinary book. Then you need to read his companion book of Numbers. Genesis tells us how everything got started. It stops just before the birth of Moses, 50-some chapters. Just before the birth of Moses, it stops. Exodus tells us of them leaving Egypt, the exodus, the exit. the exit from, and then next book is Leviticus, where God sets up the government. And then Numbers, where God continues the government in terms of the faction of various tribes, their assignments, and so their responsibilities. And then Deuteronomy, God gives the law one more time. So I'm going to shut it down for there, and I think we have a word of prayer. Now, usually I want to tell you that I have been praying for you. I have. Thank God that the coronavirus is not as deadly here in the Northeast where it is, but for many of you in the South, in Texas and Florida and Arizona, California, North Carolina, South Carolina, it is that coronavirus is jumping off the charts. And I told you that it would. It was absolutely insane to think that somehow or another that California was not going to have a bigger death toll than New York or that Texas or that Florida. It was insane. And though the reports were not as grievous as they were in New York back in March and April, where you saw everybody in the hospitals and the intubators and the nurses and the dying and the refrigerated trucks and the bodies and all that, that's going to happen in Texas the same way. It's going to happen in Florida the same way. In North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, it's going to happen in all those places the same way. It's ridiculous because it's an easily spread virus. All you have to do is breathe in somebody else's breath. And you got it. That's it. They can be standing here talking to you, and as I talk now, I don't have on a mask. My cameraman and other people, everybody around me, they've got masks on, so they don't breathe my breath. If I had coronavirus, they'd get it. And people that are walking around without a mask, I don't know, I guess you just crazy. But the reports now. But I want you to know I'm praying for you. In those regions, in those areas, and we have many members in all those states I just named. Many friends in all those states I just named. And I want you to know I'm praying for you that God will see you through. But don't take off your mask. Keep that mask on until, I can tell you safely right now, don't take it off until 2021. And then wait for me to tell you when to take it off in 2021. But not this summer, not the fall, not Christmas, not Thanksgiving, not anything. Don't take that mask off. And you have a 75% shot of not contracting coronavirus and a 70% shot of living if you don't. So don't take that mask off. But I'm praying for you. I'm also praying for you otherwise, for those of you who that have come to the ministry and you listen to me teach, and it's you listen to the things that we're saying, and it's just not traditional of what your church has been like. I'm preaching the word of God and the truth, but you're trying to make yourself acclimate to it, and then the other thing is dealing with the authority that God has given. That's why maybe the book of Leviticus teaching will be so important to us. But I am praying for you. And I want to spend a couple of minutes. I'm going to get down on my knees in just a moment here on the altar, and I'm going to pray for a moment or so. And then we can call it an evening. Before I do that, I want to thank everybody that helps to support our ministry, that through your tithing and through your offering. I've said this, and I know you've heard me, that you can give your way out of poverty. The love of money is so intensely implanted in the lives of people that, again, let's say, for instance, people say, well, I'm going to keep on eating pork. Even though I know it's like eating meat with maggots in it. I'm going to cook it even harder now. I know there's maggots in it, but I'm going to still eat the maggots. But you know the word of God says don't do it. But the same thing with the tithe. You know, God says you bring the tithe, he will bless you. Pull you out a blessing so much so you won't have room enough to receive. If you'll do it. But you say, I ain't going to do that. I'm going to use my money for myself. I'm not going to do that. But at some point in the Levitical teaching, I'm going to tell you that the Levites could not own any land. They couldn't own any property. They couldn't go to work. Not one of them. Anybody born of the sons of Levi, not one of them could hold a job other than in the temple. And the only way they lived was that the people would bring their tithes. The other 11 tribes would bring their tithes to the temple and give them to the Levites. And that's how the thousands upon thousands of people lived in that day by the tithes that were brought to. By the way, last week I said something about Israel being not a nation of great production of items, of manufacturing and that kind of a thing. And some guy who's a Jew, obviously, sent me a nasty comment saying, the Jews do have commerce. They do manufacture stuff and on and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, come on now. If you look at Germany and BMW, those Mercedes-Benz and all the, the products that they produce, and you don't buy no car from Israel. They don't produce nothing like that. Anyway, so he listened to me, right? And probably been listening to me for years, but now found no reason to try to jump on me and try to write things on the comment section to discourage other people from what we're saying. But no, the Jews are supported by the tithes and the offerings. You ever notice that most Jews in their professions, the profession of law, which is what the book of Leviticus is, if you're a Levite, you're a lawyer. Most Jews are doctors, the profession of doctors are mostly Jews. Remember I told you that the book of Leviticus, you could not be a doctor unless you were the tribe of Levi. Remember I told you Jesus said, told the 10 lepers to go show themselves to the priest. Notice how that carries over into today's age. Even from several thousand years ago, most Jews are doctors or lawyers, or in a profession that comes out of this book, right? I'm praying that I can convince you that we can also have the same kind of follow through, that we can have the same kind of professional doctors and lawyers and professional people because we follow the laws of this book. We don't have to be bus drivers and maids and dishwashers. This book gives us the authority. But one of those authorities is that we have to not eat that bad food and make sure that we bring the tithe and the offering. And to this very day, the Jews are still living by the things I'm going to teach you now out of the book of Leviticus. Bring the tithe to the storehouse and become prosperous.
The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I shall never beg bread, I shall never be defeated, for the Lord is my refuge and my strength. I shall never beg bread, we shall never be defeated, for the Lord is my shelter and my shield. For the Lord is my refuge and my strength. I have been young and now am old, yet have I never ever seen the righteous forsaken, nor in seed begging bread. He is merciful, yea, and he is blessed. I shall never beg bread, and I'll never be defeated, for the Lord is our refuge and our shield. We shall never beg bread, we shall never be defeated, for the Lord is our shelter and our shield. For the Lord is our refuge and our strength. For the Lord is our refuge and our shield.
Welcome, everybody, to the Manning Report. I am he, the quintessential American, James David Righteous Rebel Manning. How's everybody doing on this 25th day of June in the year of our Lord 2020? In the midst of the tribulation, and one of the weapons that are being given prominence now in terms of God's deconstruction of creation is the coronavirus, and America is the epicenter of the coronavirus. Listen, I'm halfway casual, halfway not so casual today. Actually, I'm going to be releasing a interview that I did with Jeff Rentz on the Jeff Rentz program earlier this week as a part of today's Manning Report, so hang tight for that. But I thought I would introduce that process to you so you'd understand exactly what's going on. But before I get there to Jeff Rentz and what we discussed this past week, I want to let you know that we're in the midst of the Civil War. Jesus said in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, verse 6 and 7, that there shall be wars and that rumors of wars. We are now in the midst of a war. The techniques, the weapons that are being used are a bit different from what would have been understood to be traditional wars. So let me pull your coat to something as we are now in the midst of this so-called Black Lives Matter earthquake, what's going on in our nation. The wars, the war that we're in right now is against authority. And it's being led by a people who hate authority more than God hates sin. And they are still, after America had given black people, African Americans, Negroes, coloreds, the presidency, and a half-baked, half-white, half-black President Barack Hussein Obama, they're not satisfied. So here, check out, when you see them trying to pull down statues and successfully pulling them down, moreover, co-opting many governments, especially in the epicenter of the Civil War and the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia, with a now, if you will, Democrat governor and Democrat mayor of the city of Richmond and of the state of Virginia, Democratic governor, where they're taking out all the statues and all the memorabilia and all of the things that represents the Civil War. This is another war. The war, the Black Lives Matter is continuing and extending the war beyond the Gettysburg Address that was given by the Honorable President Abraham Lincoln. They're continuing the war. Their war is now against the statues, the memory, and the Confederate flag. We are at war again. But this time it's being led by a bunch of heathens. It's being led by a bunch of bastards. It's being led by people who are without authority or fathers. It's being led by a bunch of renegades, and it must be put down. Black Lives Matter must be stopped. Now, here, let me say this to you, that America, in terms of its equality attempt, its Civil Rights Act, its Voting Rights Act, gave to the black people its highest prize in terms of its politics and its policy, the presidency of the United States of America. Gave it to them. Sure they did. Gave it to him, to be sure. Absolutely. Now, he failed, Obama. He failed miserably. I mean, he never intended to help black people in the first place. He didn't know how. He didn't know how to duck back in the alley. He was born in Kenya, but he didn't know how to duck back in the alley. He failed. So now, rather than celebrating the fact black folk and black lives that won the greatest prize on the American, if you will, carnival circuit, the presidency. Now they're declaring war on the Confederate flag. I'm against it. Oh, I know that the Confederate flag represents the group that sought to defend itself. I don't think they were sought to overthrow America. I don't think that. I think the Confederates sought to defend themselves and defend their rights. Now, what they were doing was prophesied by Almighty God that black people would be slaves the same way God prophesied that Jews would be slaves in Egypt for 400 years. The prophecy of them being slaves in America is in Genesis chapter 9, verse 27. And that Jews will be slaves in Egypt is in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. So they were only fulfilling that prophecy. And the war, like when the troops in Charleston fired on Fort Sumter, it was simply to defend what they believed was their way of life. Now, I'm not happy about being a slave, but God spoke it before I was born, and my words fall far short of trying to change anything that God put in his holy word in Genesis chapter 9 through the mouth of the prophet and preacher of righteousness, Noah, that Hamites would serve Japheth and Shem. I can't change that. However, what I want to do now is to say, don't look at this as what CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and Washington Post and others are posting up as Black lives now looking for change, and it's time for reform, and it's time to take Aunt Jemima off the pancake box and Uncle Ben off of rice. What we're looking at is another war. It's a different kind of war. But we are at war. And the object of Black Lives Matter, this despicable, degraded beyond the levels of hell's basement group called Black Lives Matter, have turned their angst against the generals, against the Confederate flag. But they're not going to stop there. They're not going to stop. They want to get George Washington because he owned slaves. Somebody needs to tell them that the Bible said that he would. Somebody needs to tell them as they go after they go after Thomas Jefferson. Somebody needs to tell them that Sally Hemings, who was the mistress of Thomas Jefferson, if you could get the average black man across the ghettos of America to treat the black woman as well as Thomas Jefferson treated Sally Hemings and bequeathed unto her and to her children wealth, if you could get the average black man in the ghettos of America to treat his woman the way Thomas Jefferson treated Sally Hemings, I think we'd be good to go. But having said that, these Black Lives Matter, these degenerates, these despicable characters, these devil dogs are not going to stop. You would have thought that the presidency, giving them the presidency, would have made everything. What else can we give you? Now the second Civil War is afoot. Now the problem with this is that you are going to see a response to this Civil War. They're attacking the generals. They're attacking the flag. And now Mayor Bill de Blasio has turned his former lesbian wife, Charlene McCray, loose on the culture of New York. He turned her loose, gave her the power. You decide what remains as cultural icons in New York. He's given to Charlene McCray. Her first object of destruction is to tear down Gracie Mansion. That's the home where the mayor of New York City resides, because it was built by slaves. Ain't that nothing? Going after the museums in Teddy Roosevelt and a whole lot of other things that they're going to be going after churches and everything else. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, we're at war. Black Lives Matter has been successful, and they are fueling their war. It's being fueled, it's being supported, it's being supplied by the media, and CNN in the lead with the Washington Post and the New York Times and others giving. So it must be stopped. The trouble is, it will not be, because we're also in the tribulation. This war that you see by these degenerates, these despicable, these father deserters, these mother rapers that you see out in the street, these characters of the night these bats that stand upright and carry signs that says Black Lives Matter, they should say Bats Lives Matter. That's what they should say. They should say virus-infected bats, because that's who they are. These Black Lives protesters, they're nothing more than bats. They should say Bat Lives Matter. And then finally, before I go, that there needs to be a word said about Bubba Wallace. I think that the NASCAR Racing Association ought to take a vote to expel him from the group. That's right. The rope that was found was not a hangsman noose, and the whole world got stirred up over him because he decided to lift his voice against the Confederate flag. So the war, the Confederate war, has been rejoined. Forget about Abraham Lincoln's great address at Gettysburg. Next thing you know, these Black Lives Matter gonna be down there in Gettysburg, tearing down the monuments down there as well. They going crazy, I tell you. But the war has been rejoined. The Civil War that ended in April of 1865 is now back on again. And the generals are being attacked. But these bats, these black bats that call themselves Black Lives Matter, is not just attacking the Confederate forces, but they're attacking the Union forces and general forces and religious and biblical and godly forces as well. And let me conclude by saying this. I understand. If it were left to me, I would never see anybody enslaved. But I have to tell you that my father, Ham, who established Egypt and the pyramids and the great mechanized armies and the palaces that was so prevalent, and the medicine that was used in Egypt was established and designed by my father, Ham. I'm a Hamite, the second son born to Noah, that boarded the boat during the time of the great rain and the great flood. And so I want you to understand that my father kept the Jewish people, the Shemites, in slavery for 400 years, and not just that, but afflicted them, according to Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. I'm not in favor of it, but it happened, and I'm not in favor of what happened here in America, but it happened. It's history. I think it should remain. I think every statue, whether it's Stonewall Jackson or Robert E. Lee, or whether it's Jefferson Davis, or whether it's the vice president of the Jefferson Davis regime, who wrote that Negroes or black people or Africans or whoever it was he referred to as us in that piece that he wrote some time ago, a substandard, or whether it be the Dred Scott decision, indicating that black people were not of the same equality of white people. You don't get upset by that, because you know it's impossible to be true. It's impossible to be true. Anytime you look at biblical history and know that if black people were able to keep enslaved the Jews for 400 years, according to Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, and the history of Joseph and Moses in Egypt, if they had the ability to keep Jews in slavery, they obviously are not inferior to anybody. What we need to do is to look at the ignorance of anyone who would say such things. I've heard a lot of ignorant people. I think people are the most ignorant league you're going to find anywhere on the planet right now. People like Al Sharpton and Barack Hussein Obama and the leaders of the black movement and the trannies and the homos and the queers. Those are people that need our prayers because of their ignorance. No. I'm not in favor of slavery, but it's already happened. It's history. Let the statues stand and let the history remain. Let's look forward to the future. All right, I've said all of that. I need to now turn loose now the interview I had with Jeff Rentz earlier this week, and I'll be back in the midst of all of this to have more words to say to you. Mr. Engineer, please turn loose that interview.
Years ago, I had our first guest on regularly. We used to talk a lot, and Pastor James David Manning is one of my heroes, and he is working harder than ever in what we used to call Harlem to try to help America's African Americans wake up and get a grip. He has put his life on the line. He is outspoken, but he always is worth listening to, no matter who you are or where you are or what you are. And it's really a pleasure to have a man I like to call my friend, James David Manning, back on the program this first hour tonight. Pastor Manning, welcome back. It's been too long, and I apologize for that.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for having me, and I greatly appreciate that very long introduction. But more importantly, let me congratulate you for 27 years of broadcasting, and starting out at a time when social media was not as prominent as it is now, nor the television programming that you so accurately described as powerful as it is now. And you have survived, and you're still surviving. So 27, I have to take my hat off and say congratulations on a great job that's been done. America certainly should find you as a national treasure.
Well, thank you. Thank you very kindly. It has been something that, like you, and I think that both of us understand this very well, we are blessed to be able to have the confidence and certainly trust, at least respect, of a lot of very wonderful people. We're trying to reach out, and you have been doing this for a long time. And I guess the way to start out the conversation, just with a kind of a silly general topic, but when you look at what's happening now, how do you feel? What's wrong out there? Now, my feeling is that this is clearly a long-planned, internationally financed effort to co-opt the minds and value systems of our young people and turn them against the orthodoxy, the political system that we use to maintain relative order. It's an attempted overthrow. Let's just be frank about it. That's my view. How do you see it?
I think that if I start locally, Jeff, I'm in Harlem, as you have indicated to your audience, and the folk know that I'm here, and I've been here now for 40 years in Harlem, and I've worked tirelessly to try to wake up the people of this community who are in a extraordinarily deep sleep. If you ask me, what do I think and what do I feel now? It appears to me that the sleep is getting deeper, or the injections that cause us to stupor, that, as you say, is heavily financed and heavily influenced, is growing worse. Now, I have not given up. I feel very strong about the potential of one day being able to see people rise up. But when I look at what's presently happening now and what's been happening over the past few years, if I look generally at Harlem, now I can speak globally and I can speak nationally about what I see because there are a number of national things that perhaps we can discuss here tonight. But if I'm talking about black people in general, I see a more depressing group of people than there were 60 years ago or 70 years ago and even 40 years ago. I see a decline, a breakdown in morality, a sense of selflessness, a sense of having absolutely no idea of what true morality and life is all about and what they should be about themselves. And rather than moving forward and gradually growing out of the process, I see people getting worse. You know, Jeff, I've looked at the past 150 years since the advent of slavery or the Emancipation Proclamation or the end of the Civil War. And it appears to me that the first 75 years, from 1865 to, let's say, 1950, were years where progress was made, where there was a strength in morality and there was a sense of people knowing what is right and what is wrong and dependence but the past 70, going back from 2020 to, let's say, 1960, has been a decline in the sense of truth, morality, and I've seen the people grow weaker and weaker and weaker And I would say it could be discouraging, but I am not. I feel at some point in time that I'm going to break through, and that people are going to hear me ultimately. That's one area that I'd want to discuss.
I want to just comment on what you just said, and I think you just summed it up magnificently. I think you've got it nailed right down to the 60s. In my view, during the war years, after the war years, in through the 50s, Americans of all colors, especially African Americans, were really, I think, united in that wartime feeling of assimilation, becoming one culture, one society. I remember as a little kid seeing African Americans out on Sundays like regular white people, white families would do the same thing. They'd get dressed up. They'd take the kids out. They looked terrific. They looked fantastic. And they had pride. They had pride in how they looked, how they carried themselves, how they walked. And my God, our culture then, and a lot of people listening don't remember that, but my heroes from that age, and I mean this, let's just take sports. The number one greatest, most inspirational boxer of all time, pound for pound, was Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson. He was 175 fights, won 120 by knockout, and the way he handled himself in front of the cameras as a role model for all youngsters, all kids, was marvelous. And as far as singing, it's not rap. It was singing. And Tony Williams, the lead singer of the Platters, was the best, most wonderful singer I think I've ever heard in the popular genre. Now, that's just to say that what you're pointing out now, we've got, many more singers who have made much more money than Tony did. But what are they purveying to young people that makes them inspired about life and morality and living and the values that we're supposed to have? Nothing. It's garbage. It's not music. So we have gotten weaker, and I just want to commend you for that observation. It's true. We've all gotten weaker.
Yeah, speaking of singers, and of course I could go back to not only Sugar Ray, but Floyd Patterson and several others that were favorites of mine during that era.
Sure.
And probably the problem with you and I, Jeff, is that we have a little bit of age upon us, and not everybody in your audience can personally relate to that period. But, Jay-Z is a billionaire, all right?
With a B, a billionaire. Yes.
Right. And you talk about what Tony Williams or what others would have made during the time that they were singing, and certainly singing in a way that represented humanity and represented family. And they all sung about love. I'm in love with you, you're in love with me, or, I see the harbor lights, or...
Sure.
But
there you go.
There is now a culture of young black men that all they do is bitch and moan. All they do is cuss. All they do is call women, the black woman, the most despicable names. The most despicable things come out, and they get paid billions of dollars to it. And Jay-Z is not the only one. They gets paid large amounts of money to degrade his mother, his sister, the women of his own genre. And I mean, who would have ever thought that that's where music would go? But that's what.
And they pay him. They pay him to do that. Think about it. They're supporting him.
I know that.
It's crazy.
The thing I say to my audience from time to time is that, and there's a young fellow who's on the air now stating that once these entertainers, Jay-Z, these rappers, go into the what he calls Lucifer's door, they don't really know black people anymore, and the people who own the music industry and the media industry, these types that own this industry, who can promote you or they can demote you. You're not going to go anywhere unless they put their stamp of approval on you. I don't care what you're singing or doing. And once they go in there, the more vile they are, the more they are promoted. The more vicious they are in degrading and teaching our young men and women, our young boys and girls, how to think in degrading modes, the more money they make. It is a very shameful time in which we live. But I'm still hopeful, as I stated earlier.
I think what you've just said is so important, and I keep going back to that word weaker. Our young people are no longer able to, let's just call it, think for themselves. They're not proactive about life. They've been trained. I don't blame them. It's not their fault. They've been trained to be reactive. They're given a stimuli and they react, and they pay for it. And it's very malicious the way this whole thing is set up. But yes, they've been degraded. There has been a tremendous breakdown in morals. They're virtually gone in terms of much of the pop culture here now. There's nothing there. Pornography was the key in destroying the nuclear family, morality, guidelines, boundaries, and I think good parenting. And that goes for both white and black and Latino families. When you don't have a two-family household and a strong mother and father, you got nothing. You got kids that are going to be turned loose at 9, 10 with the cell phone you bought them, and they're gone. Goodbye. Gone.
I agree with you completely about the pornography aspect of what it has done in terms of demoralizing both black and white groups. I mean, it is everywhere, and it's now accessible to young people. They know how to go online, how to find it, how to become sexual degenerates and sexual predators. They understand that process.
Oh, yeah.
And it's being fueled everywhere, and you can't get around it. But there is the other thing, and I want to talk about. I want to name Black Lives Matter before, because Jeff, think about this for just a second. When the rap music that we were talking about a moment ago became eminent in the 80s and the 90s, and up into the year 2000 or so, there was this thing called the East Coast, West Coast rappers. And the East Coast rappers were in competition, not just in musical competition as some sort of sing out, but they were in violent death competition with each other, with people like Tupac Shakur, Suge Knight, and all that crowd, and Run DMC. They were actually killing one another back and forth across in the music genre. This same group that was violently killing black men and singing about killing black men and by the way, singing about killing police officers as well. Now out in the street, and them and their children out there marching with Black Lives Matter as if somehow or another. I mean, Jeff, if you took the number of black people that were killed by black people just in the rap industry, forget about Chicago, forget about some of the other places, that it would dwarf the number of people that allegedly have been killed by either white people or police brutality. And they are swelling in their numbers. The media is covering them like this is Gone with the Wind or some great movie that's not ending 24/7.
Right.
But these are the very people that do all the killing of each other. And no one, Jeff, I'm going to let you say a word, but I've watched the media now for the last 3-4 weeks, and I've not heard one commentator say to black folk with respect to what's going on, but have you considered your own inhumanity towards each other as a racial group? Nobody's ever stated that. It's always white folk. They're always wrong. White folk are doing us wrong. White folks they're doing us wrong. We got to get some justice. We need to. It's a very sad time.
Boy, you said it again. You did touch on the word Chicago there. Oh, just over. Now this is in Chicago. 9 dead, 100 shot altogether. Father's Day weekend, Justin, Mayor Lightfoot's Chicago. What are you going to do? It's incredible. What you just said is right. They just have been turned inward on each other. And we talked about porn a little bit, but let me also mention the other side of that porn coin and we'll call it soft porn. It's a coin, it's got two sides. Soft porn, that's the kind of stuff you see on primetime TV. Women being abused, yelled at, mistreated, women dressing like hoes, men acting just primitive. These images, when our young people stare at the television, they go into a trance state. The first time takes about 60 to 90 seconds. After you've become used to going into a trance state, staring at the television image, the big screen, or your cell phone, doesn't matter, you are no longer able to discern what is going into your subconscious mind. It just pours right on in there. So all of these images, all of these stereotypes, all of these constructs take up residence in your subconscious. And over a period of time, they tip you over and you become that which you are staring at. This is not for everyone, but most. This is why they all talk the same. They all dress the same. There's rigid peer pressure to be in or you're in trouble. You're gone. So I've never seen anything more disconcerting and frankly discouraging than what I see now in our younger people.
There's a commercial we're running now for the past 3 to 4 months regarding a drug called Bictari. And the drug Bictari allegedly is a drug that allows a person that's affected with HIV, of which there is no cure at present. But the Bictari drug has a way of suppressing its presence in testing or in semen. And while it doesn't cure the individual carrier of AIDS, it allows you to have sex without infecting your sexual partner, as it were. And even if a test is given in you that if you're using Bictari on a daily basis, even a test will not be able to determine that you have. And so they are promoting this drug by saying, just be who you are. Continue to be homosexual, continue to be male-to-male sex, but use Bictari and you can do what you want. And then it ends with two men standing in a really intimate dinner evening, and they kiss one another. But the two men happen to be African-American or black men, and they kiss one another right there on television. And I mean, they do a tongue kiss. Jeff, you probably remember when kissing on television was, it was considered taboo. Two men kissing on television and it's shown in prime time, midday, and every
and that's
other time.
going into the minds of our children. This is horrible. And when I say children, I'm going to go out a little bit on a limb here and talk about Generation Z, the last generation. That's 25 years and younger. I kind of like to think of.
All right, we're coming back with more of Jeff. It's a very enthralling interview with Jeff Rance, and I thank God for the opportunity to share with him. But I want to say a word to you today regarding Princeton University's African history professor, Eddie Glaude. You've heard me talk about him of late. And in my message on Father's Day, I pointed out how his hero is James Baldwin, as my hero from the Negro era is Booker T. Washington. His is James Baldwin. And we pointed out in the book, Go Tell It on the Mountain, one of James Baldwin's first release, he talks about how he would have sex with his younger brother in bed at night. Now, Baldwin's father was either a Baptist or a Pentecostal preacher right here in Harlem. And his brother would never told the father that actually what James was doing was raping his brother in a pedophile way, because he was a young boy. They were both young. And the reason why this is important is because Eddie Glaude is now releasing a book that's going to be released today. I will not call the name of it. And he's heavily promoted by MSNBC. and he is an African history professor at Princeton University. And I was just discussing with Jeff Rance that the media pushing this homosexuality, pushing this immorality, pushing this sexual debauchery. Eddie Glaude is pushing that. So students now going to Princeton University is going to get a deep dose of James Baldwin, who was a pervert beyond perverts. Some thought he was a pretty prolific author. The people of Harlem don't think so. And that's why they chased him out. But I would want to say, for whatever it's worth, you need to boycott the book that Eddie Glaude is going to release today. And, you probably would think about this several times. I would recommend that you don't send your children, and this especially to Japheth people and Shemites, that you don't send your children to Princeton if you want them to remain somewhat sane. Now I understand why Liberty University has such a burgeoning thousands upon students at Liberty University, because many parents, especially Japheth and those of the Christian ideals, are trying to avoid places like Harvard, Princeton, and Yale because of the filth that the professors inculcate or teach or inject into the minds of young, tender students going to those universities such as Princeton. Boycott Princeton. That's what I'd like to say for whatever it's worth. But it is a sin and a shame that Eddie Glaude, who is a promoter of James Baldwin, he worships James Baldwin the way a Pentecostal worships Jesus. And it's so ugly what James Baldwin is or was. And Eddie Glaude finds that interesting. I thought I would say that in light of the things I was just discussing with Jeff. Now, I want to say this to you as well, that we are at war. There's a civil war going on now. This is not some sort of just figure of speech to identify. Black Lives Matter has been loosed. And if you can imagine that a python or a cobra snake loosed in the midst of a group of people, not knowing where he's slithering to next, and striking as he goes. That's what's happening now. Black Lives Matter is a cobra that has been loosed upon humanity. And their war is starting against the generals, but they're not going to stop there until they actually pull down Jesus Christ. Somebody sent a ugly text to me or ugly email to me the other day stating that I should take down the image of Jesus that makes him look like he's white in our opening intro to the Trust in the Lord hour, that I should take that down because Jesus looks like he's white. They're not going to stop these Black Lives Matter. Why am I telling you this? The reason why I raise that question is because we're in the tribulation. So understand it as that process. But then on the other hand, if you are members of the elect, then you will be protected and you will be saved from the wretchedness that is now. Black Lives Matter is a cobra, a satanic one, a snake that has found its power. Black Lives Matter is the snake that found its power, that slithered into the Garden of Eden. We need to pray. I'll be back. I'll have more to say. I want you to meet me this weekend at the ATLAH World Missionary Church Pulpit of Power. But I thought I'd take some time today to expose you to my interview to Jeff Rance. Mr. Engineer, bring us back.
Brutally exploited by these images in the media. They have no mercy on them. And when I see these rioters out there, all colors, it doesn't matter, they all appear to be Generation Z, 25 or younger. Not all, but let's say 90%. And I just know that these young people do not have the wisdom to know what the hell they're doing. They don't. They're programmed. They're useless eaters. That's what Kissinger would call them.
I've never heard that term, useless eaters.
That was a New World. That was a New World Order globalist term that Kissinger dropped out. That's how they look upon these people. But they just aren't engaged in the lifetime pursuit of knowledge, which leads ultimately to wisdom. They're reacting on a very superficial level, and they're just not there. And I wonder what these young people are going to turn into in another 10 years, 15, if they live that long. There's nothing going on.
One of the things that I've observed about Generation Z, you're absolutely right. They have their sense of foundational morality and values. They've gotten from social media, which is an unrestricted, ungodly, if you will, source of which they are constantly engaged in 24 hours per day.
Yep. Yep.
But the thing, Jeff, is if you talk to them, they think they know better than you. They are absolutely convinced. And then you've got baby boomers, Jeff, that encourage them. For instance, the media and other major, if you will, industries with the financing are encouraging these people to be who they are. They're not encouraging them to develop and to be people of great moral values that built this nation, that had established it as a city on a hill that it once was. So what we're looking at is people that actually they're being robbed of their opportunity to know life, and it isn't just that they're out there stupid and ignorant. But the other thing, there's a sense of joy in development and an accomplishment, leading towards a sense of wisdom and contributions to humankind. They don't understand that. And I think one of the things that probably has inspired them is they think that out there looting and marching and cursing and defaming as they are is they somehow they feel they're accomplishing something, that they're mimicking something that perhaps took part in the past that makes them look like they're doing something of nobility.
You know, you just keep putting your finger on key issue after key issue. These young people, you mentioned boomers, we call Gen Z Zoomers. Some people do anyway. And you're right, their future has been already stolen from them in most cases. They're never going to come around to saying, geez, I missed something back there. I missed something. I missed a foundation. I missed morality. I missed responsibility. I missed accountability. I'm not a victim. I'm in charge of what I do on this planet, and I'm going to be accountable. They're never going to get to that level. It's been stolen from them. You're right. You're 100% right. Like you said, this kid had grown up on rap. He didn't know about this. He didn't even know this kind of music existed. And look what they've lost. It's been stolen from them. Oh, gee. All right. Here's what we've got now. I've got a couple of clips with the great actor Morgan Freeman. All right. He's featured in this.
That's the Shawshank Redemption.
No, these are little clips from interviews, and he's talking about what's going on now with whites and blacks, and his first little clip is with Don Lemon, or Lemon, however he pronounces it at CNN. But listen to what Morgan Freeman, everyone, has to say about a kind of a leading question, but that's okay. Here, take a listen.
Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't or cannot? Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. You and I, we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.
Where are we in the United States of America?
Now this is the rapper Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne. This is him.
Skip, they wouldn't want to ask me that. They wouldn't want my answer to represent it because God knows I have been nothing but blessed. My whole path, these 33 years have been nothing but a blessing. I have never, never is a strong word, I've never dealt with racism, and I'm glad I didn't have to.
How's that? Lil Wayne. And
yes.
See, when you can get Americans, I don't care who they are, to stand up and tell it like it is. It often comes right through. And I'm going to jump around here in this little video. Here's Morgan Freeman again with Mike Wallace.
Of racism.
Stop talking about it.
Oh, let me back this up here. Here we go.
Solvers who don't want the patient to get well.
Here it comes.
That was said by Booker T. Washington.
How are we going to get rid of racism?
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
You know, it's frustrating to me that people take race and they make it personal.
A younger,
you know what I mean?
Comedian.
Like we're at a loss in this generation. If you look at it in the 80s, Archie Bunker was a stark racist. Stark. If you don't know who Archie Bunker is, look him up. All in the Family, great show. The Jeffersons, stark racist. Fred Sanford, stark racist. But you know what black people and white people did? They laughed. You watch 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Both of them hated each other because he was black and because he was white. You know what they did? They laughed.
But I asked you what the racial breakdown was of your audience. Do you remember this? You told me the only black face you could see in the whole audience was your makeup artist. I believe that's what you said. She was in the front row, right? A lot of white kids love rap.
Yes.
Explain that. What does that say to you? What's the message of it? What's the bigger picture of it?
I don't want to be bashed because I don't want to sound like I'm on the wrong if there is a side, but I thought that was clearly a message that there was no such thing as racism. That's what I thought that was.
You know, I said, and it's probably get me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it, I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem we have.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Morgan Freeman again. Just to give all of you an idea out there that there are a lot of African American, Black Americans who get it. Who get it. We're all that's the kind of country we could have and should have had.
Jeff,
that was the prevailing ethos.
Booker T. Washington is my hero of heroes. That was mentioned by Morgan Freeman. He's the man that has inspired me to be the man I am today, let down my bucket where I'm at. And I'm glad to hear that being said tonight in our discourse. But there's something I want to say, and I said it this weekend preaching in our church. Well, I said it earlier last week. We need to stop calling ourselves black and white. I'm not black. I'm a brown-skinned man, and I've seen my wife is even a lighter color than I am. We need to start calling ourselves either by the names of the fathers, going back to the biblical structure of Noah, and we can talk about that at another time. But I think the racist name, color names, causes us to think about ourselves in racial ways.
All it does is divide. It completely divides instantly.
It's a tool to force us into a corner and to take a side. It forces us to take a side. But the other thing is, and that needs to be said, is that and to use the term ideal, black people need to be blamed for what is happening to them. Morgan Freeman just said it. He says, listen, you work hard, you do what you need to do, and you get to where you need to do. You don't involve yourself with the other ideas that are self-defacing and self-defeating. There has been the last 50 years where nobody has held black people accountable for the mess, for the fathers that desert their children, for the crime in the neighborhoods, for the black-on-black crime that they do one towards the other, for the absence of development, for the absence of looking towards and developing themselves into a character of people that can be respected. I mean, if you look at Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson, one of those boys out on the basketball court, you respect the fact that they have developed those talents out there, and you go get out there to play them no matter who you are. You respect these boys can play. But when you look at the 99.9% of black people in general, whether they be men or women, they have not developed, they have not caused other people to respect their integrity of how they manage their own neighborhoods, how they manage their own families, what they've done with their own children, their own work ethics. They haven't done it, and nobody's blaming them. They blame everybody else for what their own problem. I heard this Anderson Cooper the other night on television talking about this Rayshard Brooks guy, or Don Lemon, it was Dan Jones, saying that because he was on parole, he ran from the police officer, and how awful that was, that somebody needed to have pity on him because he was on parole and he didn't want to be arrested. Well, hell, if he's on parole, why is he out there in the middle of the street drunk, driving a car, impeding traffic, falling asleep behind the wheel? If he is afraid of being arrested, then stay home and don't become a public drunk. I mean, nobody blames the younger people and this generation for their own faults. I need to say that. I want to say that. I had to say that.
Thank you. No, it's all about accountability for our decisions. He decided to drink and drive, and he was so drunk he fell asleep in line at Wendy's in his car. That's drunk. Okay? There is responsibility. Unfortunately, it had a real bad ending.
Yeah, but it did. No doubt about that. There's no doubt about that.
No.
But if he had stayed home and not gotten drunk,
of course,
we wouldn't know anything about this.
Of course.
So where does the responsibility? Where does the accountability start? Where does the responsibility start? After?
Starts when you're. It starts when you're a little kid at home, and your mother or father, hopefully, will teach you about accountability. And you know, he's been in prison. That's accountability. He went to prison.
Yeah.
Ex-convict.
Yeah.
Okay? He didn't learn his lesson.
No, he did not.
No?
He certainly did not.
All right.
But these are items that I think that we're going to have to rethink the conversation. First of all, we got to stop the titles, the racial titles, and we got to realize that it is a weapon that continues to keep us divided. However, if we were to roll back the clock to the time of the Platters, America was a much better America. In Harlem, men wore suits and ties, and the women were well dressed. You could walk down the street any day of the week and see respectable people. You thought you were on Wall Street in Harlem, New York City. Today, you see men on canes and crutches of the same age. You see them homeless. They haven't changed their underwear in months. They don't own a roll of toilet paper. They live in a homeless shelter. They buy nothing for themselves. They don't own a spoon or a fork. They come out during the day and stand on the streets and go back to the shelters. You could walk up and down 125th Street, which is from river to river, which is about a 2-mile stretch, and see maybe only one or two black men wearing a suit or a tie. It is pathetic. And just 40, 50 years ago, that was the absolute different opposite of what we see going on today. There has been a shift in morality. There's been a shift in our thinking process, and we're doing far worse now than we have ever done. And I have to live with this, by the way, every day. But I'm still hopeful that one day these people that are sleeping will wake up.
I hope. That's all I can do is hope. It is a daunting problem when you think about the mass media in this country and what it purveys constantly. And I don't care if somebody sits in front of a TV or looks at billboards. The messages are all of the same ilk. And as far as African Americans go, I think they really need to understand who put them in this original mess 400 years ago. And they're still being controlled by that same international group right now. And they will not look at it. They cannot. They don't have the knowledge. They don't know how this whole thing started. It wasn't their fault. Hell, they were kidnapped and stolen from their homeland and brought over here and sold. And billions were made on them in dollars back in the day. This was a horrible industry. Who was behind it? See, that's not talked about. They need to talk about that. They need to understand history. And maybe it'll help some of them. I don't know. I don't have the answer, Pastor Manning. I know when you talk to people in your church, you reach out and you're able to connect with people. And I can't even imagine how many lives you've turned around over the years simply by holding out the hand of wisdom to somebody and holding a mirror up at them. Go ahead.
The power of money and the power of enslavement hasn't stopped. It's just changed its method. It hasn't stopped. The purchasing, the enslavement, the mental enslavement, and the physical flesh enslavement, the ball and chain of the antebellum South is not evident today. But the whole concept has just elevated itself to a new social age. It hasn't changed. The perpetrators haven't changed their tactics either. I mean, it's still a very profitable industry. As I said before, listen, let me tell you something. You could, Jay-Z, and I call him, but there are hundreds of others of them out there who get paid billions of dollars in the music industry and in the media industry. Mm-hmm. And mainly this industry is run by Jewish people that controls this segment of our planet. And you will never hear Jay-Z say anything about Jewish people, but he will cuss black people and black women up and down the street. But he will not. And the moment he does, they'll snatch his record deal, snatch his money, and rape his wife and kick him on the street. And he'll never be anything anymore. And that's the kind of power that's a form of if you will, enslavement mentally. And then he is sent out to degrade all other young men. And because he's got such power and exposure, he's in media, he's a giant, he's larger than life. These young boys idolize him and want to be like him and are willing to sell their souls to do whatever it is to get to where he's at as well. It is a very powerful demon that is being used, and it has not stopped over the past 400 years. And I don't know that anybody plans to stop it. Except for me.
Well, as long as there's money on this planet and greed, it probably won't. But you're right. Most young people, they're idols, athletes.
All right. So much for Jeff. Thank Jeff Rentz. If you're a listener of Jeff Rentz, let him know we put his program on blast today. And again, thank him for allowing me to share with his extraordinary audience. And before we wrap everything up here today, I want to say to you, of course, as I've stated previously, I need you to not let these people, don't let Black Lives Matter, don't let LGBTQ, and don't let just black people in general run me out of Harlem. I ain't going nowhere, obviously. But it's just good to know that I got people who believe that I ain't going nowhere. But I want you to know that they're trying to run me out of Harlem. They want to steal my voice. And I have a word, the bread of life in my mouth for the people that are suffering and for America in general and for all races. I've got a word of unity. I've got a word of from Almighty God that is a blessed word. That is as blessed as the word that Moses had in his mouth when he talked to the people about the promised land that God had orchestrated earlier to Father Abraham. So stay with me. And help me to continue to get the word out in whatever way that you possibly can. And be ready to be elevated as well. For instance, I know a number of people probably listen to me and wonder how on earth can I say that the Confederate flag should stand and that the statue should not be taken down, and those taken down should be reconstructed all the way from St. John's Church down in New Orleans to Richmond, Virginia, the plaza there with Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. They should be reconstructed. People say, well, how can you possibly say that? Just keep listening to me. Just keep listening to me. I'm nobody's fool. I'm the Lord's servant. Don't let them run me out of town. Don't let them do it. And you can stop it, and we can be victorious. I'm James David Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant. Peace out.
Welcome to today's current events class. I am Sabbath Rachel LaFleur. Welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Current Events class. I am your host for today, Sabbath Rachel LaFleur, and today I have with me some of our high school students from ATLAH High School. You've seen them before, but I'd like to introduce all of them to you. I have with me today Israel Lewis, who is a ninth grader in our high school. I have Layla and Yegbu, who is a junior. I have two brothers, Zachariah Alhaimi as well as Ishmael Alhaimi, who are also juniors in our high school. Welcome everyone. How are you doing today?
Good.
All right, that's great. Now, there's a lot to talk about today, and I was trying to figure where should we get started. Obviously, you all have been watching the news. You've been watching what's been going on in the world. And one of the biggest things to say that is in the news now, it's what's going on with Black Lives Matter and the protest. I don't want to take away from the coronavirus because we know that is still going on, and we will talk about that as well. But Black Lives Matter has been in the news lately, especially since the death of George Floyd and also Rayshard Brooks. They have skyrocketed. They are everywhere. We are seeing their writings everywhere, and Pastor just spoke about this morning, the fact that they are going to be actually painting a mural here in Harlem, on the streets of Harlem, stating Black Lives Matter. But I want to talk about Black Lives Matter in this respect. This past weekend was Father's Day, as you all know. And in Chicago, it has been stated that 56 people, it has gone up since then. 104 people have been shot over Father's Day weekend in Chicago, and 14 of those people have died. Now, the news has stated that 4 of those people were children, and it's conflicting because the numbers change. The first time I read this, it was 56 people that were shot and 10 people that were killed. But regardless, the point is many people have been killed over the Father's Day weekend. Now, this is certainly not the first time we have heard news like this. This has been ongoing, especially in the years of the so-called reign of Obama, the long-legged Mac Daddy, the so-called first Black president. People were killed in Chicago repeatedly during the time that he was president of the United States. And it is still going on, and I will mention why that is taking place. But in regards to Black Lives Matter, as you all have seen them over the past few weeks and protesting and all of these things that has been going on, all of these people killed in Chicago on a continual basis, all of these Black people being killed by other Black people in other cities and states around this country goes on repeatedly. We all know that. In the communities that you live, you may know that to be true as well. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, or this organization that states Black lives do matter, my question to you is, do you really think that they represent Black lives that truly matter? Or what do you think about this organization in general? Layla, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think that I think half of them, they do represent that Black Lives Matter, but I think the other half, I feel like like the other half, they just want, you know, they want to give out what do you call it? How do I say this? They want to give out like anger towards white people. Like it's not about equality for them. It's like more of a hatred thing for whites instead of being like united and equal. I think, you know, that it's not always, for some, it's not always about the better. It's just getting back at them, like as revenge or whatever. But yeah.
Okay. Ishmael, I'm going to go to you next. What do you think?
Well, I do have to agree with what Leela said about the how like some people do it because they do believe it, but other people just don't do it because of that. I do think I do believe there's a lot of people in the movement that do believe that Black Lives Matter. You know, like how they've always been going after Black people. That much I do believe. But I believe some others aren't doing it for that. They're just maybe doing it saying like, oh, I support this. We get more in this social media, or saying like, oh, I support them. I do this because I'm nice. Like, I just feel some people are doing more for publicity than more for the actual movement.
Okay, Israel, what do you think?
I have to agree with Ish and Layla. But I'm like, I understand. I feel like some people understand and some people don't. Like some people understand why they're doing the marching and stuff, right? But I believe that majority of other people are just doing it, I don't know, I guess for fun, or as it says, for publicity, right? Because I truly believe that like majority of the people do not understand why they're marching, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay. And Zachariah, your thoughts?
I have to agree with the rest of my classmates that this started off as a good thing, that it started off as what it was supposed to be, but then opportunists came and they saw to take an advantage of this. They started to take advantage to rob stores, start riots, cause fires. And some people aren't in it for the Black Lives Matter. They're in it because they don't want the government, or they don't like the police. They want to have their own thing, and they saw this and they took an advantage of this.
But let me ask you all this question as I'm listening to all of you speak regarding this. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, what you are saying is that if you are a Black person, and I'm just saying Black because that's the word they're using, you know that we use the term Hamite. But what they're saying is that if you are a Black person, that your life is worth something, that your life matters, that you are not to be disregarded, that you are not to be thrown away when they say the Black Lives Matter, right? So my question to you is this: if Black lives truly do matter, and you're saying that Black lives are worth something and that they should not be disregarded and they should not be thrown away, then why don't we see protests taking place like we are looking at now when Black people kill each other? Because this happens on a day-to-day basis. As I just stated to you, 104 people were killed just over this past weekend in Chicago. Why don't we see protests the way that we have been looking at over the past month? In regards to these Black people, don't these Black people lives count? Were they not important? Was it just about George Floyd? And we know that he was murdered. I'm not taking that away. We know that this police officer murdered him. But when we talk about Black people and you talk about their lives really mattering, what about 104 people who were just shot this past weekend? What about the 4 children who died over this past weekend in Chicago? Don't their lives matter as Black young children? Or is it just about when white people do something to Black people? I mean, I want you to really think about that when you talk about an organization who is so-called saying that they represent Black people and that Black people are so important to them, but yet we only see the outrage when white people do something to Black people, but yet when Black people do things to other Black people, we don't see that same outrage, especially at the extent that we are looking at now. What do you say about that, Ishmael?
Well, I think it is because of that. I think it's mostly because they have this tension between the white people, the black and the white, the tension between each other. Because even like a long time ago, you know, white people had black people as slaves, and that tension hasn't gone away. Even though nowadays, no one here's been a slave, but that tension is still there. And even though it wasn't us, we were like, oh, but you did this. Your people did this, and you might do it again. You know,
so are you saying that their focus is just primarily on, as you're talking about the tension between black and white people, that their focus is just primarily on that tension? That's all it's focused on.
Most of it is based on that tension of what the white man did to the black people, what they did to them. That's why they're like, if you see a black man shoot another one, they're not going to talk about it. But if you see a white man shoot one, it's a big deal.
But why isn't that a big deal, Ishmael, as you just brought up? If a black man kills another black man, which happens all too often in the communities, why aren't they outraged about that? Does that not matter? Should that not matter?
No, it does matter, because still, you're taking somebody's life. That's still someone dying. But I still think it's because they feel like they still, that tension, they kind of want revenge in a way. They kind of want them to suffer how they did. They want them to go through the same stuff they went through, or like something similar to it. So they wait for like a white person, like, oh, like how with George, a white cop killed him. They're like, okay, that's it. A white man did it. We're gonna just get on that. We're just gonna start, you know, building on that, like how this always happens with the white cops are focusing on the black people. You know, even though like there's some other people, so like gangsters, these black people like killing other black people, but they don't want to focus on that.
Right.
They want to focus mostly on the racial part of it, how the white man killed the black man.
Okay. Layla, I heard you make a sound as I was speaking. What do you think about that?
Well, I would have to agree with Ish, because on a day-to-day basis, when black people kill black people, it's like we killed them. But I think for people, it's like they see the perspective of, oh, if a white man touch my people, that it's really an issue. Like, we gotta protest, we gotta do this and that. But when it's our own people, it's like, okay, and it happened. I think people are so blindsided and focused on the part where it's a different race, and the race is a white man, and that they see it as a threat, and they see it as we have to do this, we have to step up because they're killing our people. But we kill our people all the time, like on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think people are realizing that this goes both ways. Yes, it has happened a lot with with white people, but this also goes both ways with blacks as well. And also, just like Ish said, that you still taking somebody's life,
right?
So that should matter as well. But you know, people is gonna always have their own mindset of things and how they comprehend and think the way they think.
Okay, Israel, what do you have to say?
I mean, Layla just said everything. I don't think I can say anything to that, but black on black crime, I don't think they pay attention to that. It's like a regular thing to them, as they said. When a white person kills a black man, yes, they're gonna go out, of course. I think it's only for attention though, because as you said before, I don't know why they don't do an outrage when it's black on black crime. I don't know why I don't get on the person who killed his fellow, my fellow, I guess you could say.
Right.
But I don't know. People are just stupid sometimes. I think they don't know what they're doing sometimes. They don't think. They just want attention.
Well, let me ask you all this question, and I'm going to throw this to you, Zachariah. Do you think that they have gotten used to the fact that black people just kill one another, and so that's just the way it is? There's nothing we can do about that. Why even try to protest? Why even try to be outraged or say something about it? That's just the way it happens in the hood. That's just the way it's going to be. There's nothing we can do to change it. Do you think that is their mindset, Zachariah?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like they have adapted. I feel that they I don't know how to say it.
Take your time.
Well, I feel like they've adapted to what they do, and I feel like for them this is common. They've okay with this because it's not someone it's someone that they from their race that they're not gonna be mad at. Well, mad at to a certain extent. That they've been dealt this card and they've decided to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I
know it's a tough question that I'm asking, but I want you all to really just think about it for a second as we are watching all of this unfold in the world. Do you think that they've just this is just the way it is? Black people gonna always kill black people, so why even raise an eyebrow to that? Why talk about it? Layla, do you think that they've just...
Yeah, I do. I think that they just they adapted to it. Like, this happens all the time, but it's our people. Like, we shouldn't have something against our people. But if it's a person of a Caucasian descent, it's okay, they shouldn't be killing us. And I think it's a matter of the fact that they need to open up their eyes and see that it's their people and other people killing one another. And I don't really think that they are gonna have an issue with their own kind killing one another, because they probably made up their mind as like, it's our culture, this happens, so I mean, why try to fight against it? But let's fight against the white man. I'm not trying to say I support the killing,
right?
But I'm just saying.
Now, you just raised a thought in my mind as I'm listening to you. As you just stated, it's our people, it's part of our culture. This is part of our culture. So this is just the norm. So let me ask you this question in light of what you just stated. Do you think that obviously the mindset to focus on raising the communities, Black communities, and again, I'm using that word Black, I'm using that term, but I want to say Hamite communities. Black Lives Matter, could they be used instead of focusing on the racial aspect? And we all know that there are racists in the world, right? That is not going to change. No matter what they're doing right now, they're getting all of these statues taken down, all of these flags taken down. It's not going to make racist people be any less racist towards Hamites. It's just not going to do it. So when you talk about change, it's not going to change. But my question to you all is, should their focus be on raising the communities, raising the Black communities, building the Black communities rather than race? Do you think that if they focused on building the Black communities, we got Black communities that don't have fathers in the home. We have Black communities where there is severe poverty, where people are dependent upon the government to take care of them. Black communities where there are many uneducated people that are there, Black communities where they are doing nothing but selling drugs and being involved in gangs and just hanging out and so forth. Do you think that they could do more good, or I shouldn't say more good, excuse me, because they're not doing any good right now at all, but do you think that they could do good if they would put their focus on building the Black communities instead of what they're doing right now?
I want to say yes, they can, because what I think is that the building the Black communities, it starts within the home first, like having a father in the home and listening to your father and everything. Because what I think is that most Hamite boys who grow up in like places like Chicago and Harlem, stuff like that, we know half of them grow up without a father, right? So they're not disciplined enough to listen. So when the police say, "Okay, sir, pull over," and they get an attitude, instead of actually listening to what they got to say, there's a slight chance they might, leave there alive instead of being killed. But because you're in a home where you don't have a father who disciplines you and tells you what to do and everything, you get the sense of, oh, I can fight back. I have the audacity to, like, that flair of you can do whatever you want. So then you take that mindset and you take it out on the street with the police and everything, and they figure, oh, you think you're a tough guy, and then they kill you right there. So what I think that Black Lives Matter needs to start within the communities, in the homes first, before they even try to deal with racial people and, you know, making them change and whatnot.
Right. As you are here today with 3 males, and with 3 males who have fathers in their home. All of you have fathers in your home. And so I'm asking you, Israel, in terms of what Layla just stated, what do you have to add to that?
Okay. So I'm just saying, hypothetically, if I wasn't like a part of the church with the leader, Pastor Man and my father, I probably would have been off. But since I'm like in the church and stuff, I'm like, my father has control of me. He tells me what to do, I do it. Pastor tells me what to do, I do it. They rebuke me, I change. I mean, having a father is a really important thing to have in your life.
Right.
Because I don't know, you'll be able to do things successfully with a father. Like if you how do I put this? I mean, if you don't have a father in your house, you're gonna go off. Like I seen kids on the street, I don't know, ghetto, and I know they have no fathers because of the way they act and the way the spirit is.
Right.
But the point I'm trying to make is having a father in your life is really an important thing to have. So you can go places. You can go places with a leader in your
Now I find it interesting, Israel, that you stated that if you didn't have your father and you didn't have Pastor Manning, you think you'd be just like the boys on the street. Is that what you said in the beginning?
Yes.
That's quite interesting and profound. Ishmael and Zachariah, both of you have your father in your home. As Layla just stated, that she thinks if Black Lives Matter really wanted to help Black people, they need to focus on building the community. What do you all have to add to that?
Well, yeah, I do have my father in my home, but sometimes my father, he works.
Right.
And he works long hours, sometimes like 12-hour shifts. So he was never always there. So sometimes when they're talking about how fathers could change how the person acts, I kind of half about that. Because on one thing, yes, a father figure is nice to have. You need someone to look up to. And those young people look up to their father as their father figure. But, you know, sometimes I feel like it's just how you raise a child in general. If you try to focus on raising your child, okay, like don't talk back to the police or say thank you, hold the doors for others, like raise them like to be a kind soul, they'll do what you tell them to do as long as you keep them on the right track. So that's what I'm not saying. A father's not like a big, like if you don't have a father, that doesn't mean your child won't grow up. Like to be sassy and stuff. I do feel like it could help to have two parents to in a sense, like really, how do you say, like teach the child. But I wouldn't also say one parent's not bad either. The parent has to learn how to, you know, in a sense, teach them. Because even
I will
if
say this.
you could still teach them what a father could teach them.
Right. I will say this, Ishmael and Zach, and you may not see it now as young men, but your father owns his own business, and I think that needs to be said. And because he owns his own business, he does work long hours, but the two of you often work in your father's business with him, along with him many times. And so your father is instilling work ethics in you, but you may not realize it right now. Having those moments of working in your father's business is instilling work ethics in you that many young Black males don't have, let alone they don't have a father. But to have a father to have his own business, it's a little different. And you may not see it now because you are young, but my father had his own business when he was growing up, and I worked in my father's business as well as my siblings did. We all worked in his business. It adds something to you as an individual when you can work, you can see your father have his own business and work within the business knowing that it belongs to him. And so I think that needs to be said, as I've heard the statements that you make. But certainly a father does make a difference, and especially in the life of a young boy, a father definitely makes a difference. But I hear what you are saying. There are times when a father is not available not because he doesn't want to be, but maybe the father has died. Has been deceased. And so a woman winds up raising children, but they usually have other male role models within the family that they can look up to, if you hear what I'm saying, usually an uncle or a cousin or older brother. But as I go back to what Israel said, having his father and pastor, a strong man in the house really does make a difference. And certainly with many of these young boys that we are witnessing with Black Lives Matter and just around the world, especially in the Hamite communities, they don't have fathers. They don't have fathers. And no matter how good a mother is, she cannot teach a boy how to be a man. It's never going to happen. She could work as hard as she could, but she cannot teach a boy how to be a man. There's just no way that will ever happen. So on that note, I want to take a quick break, and then we are going to be back. And when we come back, I want to talk to you about defunding the police as we talk about Black Lives Matter. And I want to get into the coronavirus because it's still here. So everyone stay tuned. We'll be back with more of the current events class. Welcome to today's current events class. I am Sabbath Rachel Lafleur. All right, we are back from the break, and again, I am Sabbath Rachel Lafleur here with some of our high school students. Before the break, we were talking about Black Lives Matter, and I want to turn the corner in regards to defunding the police. Now, you know that has been an issue that has been brought up since the death of George Floyd, and it's an ongoing conversation that people are having. So in regards to defunding the police, a couple of things, and I made some notes here that I wanted to share with you, and I'm sure you all are aware of this. One is San Leandro in California is the first city to defund the police. And again, before I start, let me state this. Defunding the police, as you all know, means to reallocate monies that usually goes towards the police and put them in other places. Many people believe that if you take the monies that were normally given out to the police department and put them in different organizations within a community, that will help the community, all right? So that is what it means by defunding. But this is what I have to add, because when I hear defunding the police, for me, it means that we won't have as many police officers as we see now. Now, a couple of things. In New York City, on July 4th, the New York Police Department police officers are being encouraged to do a strike for July 4th. And I'm sure that you all have seen this in the news. And so my question to you is, based upon all this that we have seen, the shortage of police officers calling in sick in Atlanta, police officers not answering their calls when they are being called, and not all of them, but certainly many police officers have walked off of their jobs and so forth. Now, this is not a question about whether they're bad police officers. We already know that they exist. We already know that there are racist police officers. So this is not about that. My question to you in general is, do you think they should defund the police department? I see Ishmael has his hand raised up first. Go ahead.
Well, if I'm asking, should they defund it? No, they shouldn't. Because first of all, the police department, it's a law enforcement. there's always been some sort of law enforcement around. Even back in biblical times, I believe it was like the Levites who enforced the law on the Israelites. And even the Egyptians, the people who would guard the Egypt, would also serve to enforce the laws of the land.
Right.
There's always been some sort of like law enforcement, even if it wasn't big laws like ones we have now or simple laws then. Someone was there to enforce it. And with if you defund it, what you're really doing is maybe either causing cops to start being lazy, or you're just making less less officers to go around.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was big stuff, maybe like there's not that many this time to go help out with the with big like stuff like a bank robbery or something.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna have as many as they used to. And if they're doing, and for the bad cops, like I don't think there's really just a good thing as a good cop or a bad cop. I think there's bad people who wear the uniform, and there's good people who wear the uniform. Like there's a good person who came there hoping to go save lives and make a difference. But now he's a part of this thing where this one killed somebody. Now everybody else is assumed like a cop is this. When really there are genuinely good people who are police officers who went over there just to help others.
Right.
And then there are other people who are genuinely bad people who are police officers who went to ruin other people's day or wanted to feel powerful.
Now, I really like that statement you just made, that you don't think there are good cops and bad cops. You just think that there are good people and bad people who happen to wear police uniforms. I really like that statement. Layla, what do you have to add to what Ishmael just stated?
Well, I do agree with him on what he said, but I don't think that they should like defund like the police because there are some good police officers. Not all of them are bad. It's just the fact that some of them, they put a bad name for the police officers. Mm-hmm. So it's like they always get labeled as, oh, the police officers, they're they're killers, they do this, they do that. So it tarnishes their name, and everybody thinks, okay, all of them are bad, but not all of them are bad. And I don't think we should like totally defund them because there's times like people are gonna need help, like they're gonna need police officers, and who's gonna respond to the call?
Right.
Like it's lives depend on it as well. So I mean, I don't really quite agree with them defunding the police.
Okay, Israel, what do you have to add?
Not much, but it's like there are good cops and bad cops, but it's like the saying, if one gets in trouble, we all get in trouble. But with the police, if one how do I say this? If one cop does something bad, then that one person messes up the whole title for the good cop. And yeah, that was it, basically.
It's almost like that saying, one rotten apple spoils the bunch, right? Is that what you're, okay, that's what you're saying. All right, Zachariah?
Well, I feel like all my fellow classmates have said, that there aren't bad cops. They're just some people who wear the uniform, but for bad reasons. And for me, I feel like some people, they just kind of abuse the power that they've been given. They think now that they're above the law. Well, some of them, again, not all of them do that. And that makes people feel like that they're all bad because now they feel like they're above the law.
Right.
Not all of them are. There's that handful. They feel like, oh, well, now since I'm a cop, I can do something and I can't get in trouble.
Well, let me ask you this question. Just think about, again, the article that we read in regards to that police officers in New York City are being encouraged to have a strike on July 4th. We all live in New York City. I know that you all have been hearing the firecrackers that have been going on nonstop. I mean, it almost sounds like World War III in the area I live, with the firecrackers that have been going on every single night since the end of May, beginning of June. But think about on July 4th, if police officers actually do strike, and that when they are needed, they don't answer the calls. Just think about what kind of chaos that would be for us here living in New York City. And also think about the fact that this call is being made by many of Generation Z, which is your generation. Generation Z are those, and they're conflicting years as to what some say born after 1997, some say born from 1995 to 2012 or 2016. But this is Generation Z, again, which is your generation. Of course, we're going to throw in some millennials within that group as well. But this is what they are calling for, defunding the police officers. And the thing that I find interesting, and again, you'll share your response to what I'm saying, is I find it so very interesting that many people who are calling for defunding the police, a lot of them, especially the high up people who have these high positions, don't actually live in the hood, don't actually live in the ghetto. They want to defund the police. But the other aspect is that it's coming from a lot of young people who are saying to defund the police. And as you were speaking, Ishmael, when we need them, when you call them, if Black Lives Matter were about the business of truly caring about Black lives and work on building the communities, who's gonna put things in order? If there are no police officers, if the communities are already broken, you all just stated that there are no fathers in the home and the importance of fathers in the home. What kind of order is there going to be? Is there going to be any order? Who's going to run out when something happens, Ishmael?
Hey, listen, nobody. No one's going to come because now they feel like they're being mistreated. Out of everything they've done, now they feel like they're trying to defund them, trying to take the thing that, like I said, that some people who are actually trying to do stuff,
right?
Now they're being like misjudged and stuff. Like I said before, there's always been a type of law enforcement.
Right.
Always. To enforce the laws and tell people what was right and what was wrong. Now people want to take that away.
Mm-hmm.
That's just caused nothing but anarchy. It's going to nothing but chaos and destruction. Now someone can go murder somebody, and then what are they going to do? Call the cops? They took the cops away.
Yeah.
They do whatever they want. And with the firecracker thing, I wanted to mention that I know somebody who lives a tall building, and they shoot firecrackers right next to his building, and sometimes they actually the pieces of the firecracker do fireworks and firecrackers, and they'll throw up in the air.
Right.
And sometimes one landed in one of my the friend's building and actually went off.
Right.
And I heard it through his mic, and I actually was wrong. He said someone like literally threw a firecracker in my house. And I was surprised because I haven't heard any firecrackers go on, like firecrackers or fireworks, but it's become more and more popular.
Yeah, it has. It definitely has. But as we're talking about defunding the police, and this is what they're calling for, and again, the city in California, who's amongst the first city to actually defund the police, I guess we're going to see what takes place. I think it's important that we remember we're in the midst of the tribulation, right? And so a lot of these things, in fact, all of these things that we are witnessing is par for the course, is part of what is going to take place in the tribulation. We haven't even gone through the famines and the pestilence yet and the earthquakes in dire places. But we're also in the midst of the coronavirus, which again is part of the tribulation. And as we've been home now for the past 3 months, school is almost over for us. I'm sure you all are excited. Yay, school is almost over. We've been dealing with the coronavirus. And even as we speak now, I think the latest now, and even when I make mention of this number now, by tomorrow or by this evening, this is going to change. 29 states and the U.S. territory showed an increase in their 7-day average of new reported cases. As of Monday of this week, there are reported 2,290,000 cases of coronavirus, and 118,000 people have died as of Monday of this week. Now, again, this number is going to change. It changes every single day. So on top of everything else that we've been talking about, we're still dealing with the coronavirus. And so what do you all think in terms of all of this that you are witnessing, between dealing with coronavirus, between dealing with all the protests, dealing with Black Lives Matter, dealing with police being called to be defunded? As young people, part of this Generation Z that I just spoke about, how is this affecting you all?
Well, ma'am.
How is this affecting you?
Obviously, this is not normal for us because, now because of the virus, we have to walk around with masks on. And I mean, we wasn't doing that a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So it's different. And it's like, it's not normal for us because we're not used to this. Like, I would say earlier this year, going back towards like last year, everything was like, I don't want to say fine, but everything was pretty like normal for us. But now that this is happening, I mean, I feel like it has changed a lot of people in a lot of ways. Also, I mean, I know there's more to come, and that it's gonna be a lot on us because us as Generation Z, we haven't lived that long. Like we've been living, but we haven't lived that long. So I just hope that we're able to adapt to these changes and, be able to move on forward stronger, because I know like being in quarantine and, not really having much of a social life because we didn't school stop and everything. For a lot of kids my age and maybe even a little beneath me, I know they felt a little socially different now that this is over.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to become accustomed to that again because of the virus. But I mean, let's hope that there's, a little bit of change, I guess, in our lifestyle instead of, just being in solidarity by ourselves at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Israel, watching all of this coronavirus, protests, all of these things that you've been seeing since school has shut down, as far as us meeting on a day-to-day basis in person, how has this affected you?
I mean, I can't go places. I can't like go chill with my friends. Well, yeah, my friends and stuff. And I'm limited to do things really. I can only go to one place or another. I can't get sidetracked and go somewhere else, because the coronavirus. But like I can't get my hair cut, and like that's affecting me. And the barbershops are open too. Like that affects me too. But my family and I, we're not able to, like, I don't know, once in a while go out occasionally and eat or just go to the park or something. But not just me, and nobody's allowed. Like nobody's allowed. They're limited to do things.
Now, you just brought up the fact that barbershops are open now, but you can't go. So when you're saying that you can't go, though we're in phase 2 of New York City, you all know that, right? And phase 2 means that there are things that are opened up more so now than they were last week. But when you say that you can't go, it means that you and your family and your parents have made the decisions that even though these things are open, we are not going. Is that it?
Something like that. I mean, I can't. They'll probably allow me to go, but I probably can't go with a lot of people inside the shop.
Yeah.
They may have coronavirus. I may not know it.
Yeah, definitely. Ishmael, how has it been? How has all of this, everything that we've been dealing with the past 3 months, how has it affected you as an individual?
When we're talking about the quarantine, I mean, it's affected me positively and negatively. Because on one hand, I'm just trying to learn more about myself. I got time to do that. Trying to learn myself more. On the other hand, I'm talking to myself, so I'm going crazy. It's like both evenly like good and bad, because one hand like that with the quarantine, and the barbershops, my barbershop's open, but they're doing appointments now, so you gotta do it at a certain time, certain like time schedule. You gotta like say, oh, can we get that guy over there, that one over there, I want them to cut my hair,
right?
That. Now, if we're talking about with the how the riots and everything, I gotta admit, and how you mentioned earlier about the corona, how much cases went up.
Yeah,
I think it's mostly because of the marches. Because sometimes humans are stupid, and they completely forgot about the coronavirus. And after George Floyd, they completely forgot about the coronavirus. They forgot they had to stay home.
Right.
So they went out. Everybody wear masks, sure, but not gloves.
Yeah, yeah.
So the thing, like, everybody's touching their own, like, their own man. Like, sometimes I was a human, mostly teenagers. The teenagers are the ones who are mostly doing this, so they're mostly being stupid. But sometimes it's the human race in general. We do stupid stuff that help, like, affect everybody.
So let me ask you, has this been hard for you? Has everything that you've been dealing with, has it been hard for you as young people? Because this is a lot for just adults to have to withstand with everything that we've been witnessing. Has it been difficult for you as young people? Zachariah?
For me personally, it's been 50-50 for that. It's been somewhat easy to go through because it's kind of just easy to stay home most of the days. When you're going to school, you don't want to go to school sometimes. So you always dream about the days you want to go stay home. So you know what you want to do already.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you're inside all day, you kind of miss going outside. And then you're like, okay, now I want to go outside, but now you can't. So then it's difficult to deal with. And then you get sick of being all day. You get bored very easily. That's why I'm saying it's 50-50 because at one hand, you know what you want to do, and you're gonna have fun for a certain amount of time. Then the other, you're bored, you want to go outside.
Yeah.
But you can't because you're gonna get sick.
Yeah, I've often stated that as much as you may enjoy YouTube or TikTok or any of the other things you're doing, you cannot do that all day, every day. After a while, even that gets boring, and you just need something else to stimulate your mind. So I certainly understand that where you're coming from. Let me turn the corner again and ask you all this question. Tribulation Trump is the illegal president of the United States. You all know that. And watching him, his rally that took place this past Monday, or was it Monday or was it sometime? His rally took place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Watching Tribulation Trump in dealing with the coronavirus and dealing with the protests and dealing with people in general, what do you think about what you have witnessed with this president? I see, Zach, while your hand goes up.
With this president, I see how easily people can be overcome by anger.
What do you mean by that?
That people are very mad at him at the moment because not only did he not try to do anything to prevent the virus from getting into the United States, he bombed he bombed someone else. He fired some missiles at another person across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says very racist things to other people. And you can see that people are really mad at him and how easily influenced they are by their anger. That they're really trying to kind of make him pay for what he's done. As like they're trying with the rallies, they're trying to get him to see what he's done. But and you just see that he doesn't really care. Since he's the president, he doesn't care what other people think.
Okay. And Layla, what do you think?
I mean, we all know that he's like not really stable enough to be our president. I think that he doesn't really take much of this stuff seriously, and that he thinks it's gonna blow over eventually, but it's not. And with him, it's just like a never-ending story. Like at this point, we just gotta hope that we as a nation will be able to survive, because the way he's leading us is like we're not going anywhere. And his supporters are brainwashed because he's not a good president at all.
Right.
He doesn't do anything for the people except just make jokes while he's at his little campaigns or whatever he do. And he's just something else.
Israel, what do you think of observing Tribulation Trump these past almost 4 years now?
We need a new president.
That's just the bottom line, right? We just need a new president, right? Do you think a new president is going to make a difference in terms of us living within the tribulation? Do you think that's going to make a difference?
Yeah, sense. and knows the right thing, I maybe there's a chance, yeah.
Okay, maybe. Zachariah, I see your hand, but let me get Ish real quick and ask him what are his thoughts about Tribulation Trump.
He's just bad. He's doing terrible at his job. He's just terrible.
Okay.
At what he does.
What?
Like my brother said, he tried to launch missiles. I don't see the last president even attempting to do that. And then again, when the coronavirus started, all he did was hide in a bunker. Well, he let all of us stay here, tell us to wear masks, but he decides to go hide in a bunker. Then again, he doesn't even know how to type on Twitter. Do you see the words he messes up?
Yes.
He's the worst president. He's gonna go down in history for that. He's gonna go down in history as the worst U.S. president to ever exist.
Now, Zachariah, you had your hand up. You had something to say?
Yes. That the question you asked Israel, saying would another president help? That depends on the president. Because we elected a man called Trump because he made promises that he couldn't keep.
Yeah.
He said that he would make America great again, but he made America worse again. And we fell for those promises because we believed that he would actually do them, and we let other candidates who could have done good go away. So I feel that if we had a better president who cared for this country and was willing to make changes to make changes for the better, then we could have a really good president. But presidents who are really good usually have been assassinated.
You know, you had me thinking in terms of presidents. Now, Tribulation Trump, again, obviously is the president right now. For 8 years, we had the long-legged Mac Daddy, right? The world calls him Obama, the so-called first Black president. And we saw that during his reign, he did absolutely nothing, right? Especially for the Hamite community. He didn't do anything. And I spoke to you all about the deaths that have taken place over this past weekend in Chicago. And the thing that I wanted to remind you all was that Pastor Manning had prophesied during the reign of Obama that the deaths would continue to take place in Chicago because they put a man who was illegal in the House of the Presidency, right? Because we know that Obama was chosen because he was so-called Black, right? Which is also is racist, really. To choose a man because of his skin color is racist, right? And we know that a lot of the white liberals chose him to try to say, okay, well, Black people, we're giving you something. But he didn't do anything for Black people. And a lot of Black people recognize that has taken place. But when we talk about the world that we are living in now, and again, going back to you as young people, it's difficult for adults to handle everything that we are witnessing. So as young people at 15, 16, 17 years old, I'm sure that this can't be easy for you to witness, watching all of this take place. I mean, 3 months ago, we were going to school every day. Your teachers were getting on your nerves as they normally do. Asking you to get your work done and get your homework done, and you were able to sit together and have lunch and laugh and do all of those great things together. And here we are 3 months later, everyone is in their own home. You know, though we're in phase 2 of New York City, things are never going to be the same again. Do you think about that? That the way things are now, that how much the world has changed in just 3 months. Just imagine, it's only been 3 months and the world has changed in such a huge way. Do you think about the future as far as young people and wonder what is in store for you as young people? Israel.
I just want to be over because you know about me and my group, we're trying to get out there. And
you talking about give it up?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can't do that of coronavirus. But I just hope it ends soon. I'm trying to do great things, you know.
Yes, you're trying to do great things, and you will do great things. Do you ever think about, Ishmael, how this is going to affect you in the future, just looking at everything that's taking place just in the past 3 months?
A little bit, yeah, sometimes, because we don't know how long this thing is gonna be around. They say it's going away, but that could just, they could be saying that trying to get people more out of their house or trying to make people feel safer or something. We don't really know if it's gone away or not. And if it hasn't gone away, if this keeps up for longer than we expected, this could just be how we normally live now. We have everything through our phones. We have to wear masks and stuff outside. We'd have to do all these things now that everybody had to start getting used to, because now all of a sudden, you know, this is how life's gonna be now. And in a sense where, how do I say, we're in this, like, everybody now has to adapt, and we're not sure when we're gonna have to stop adapting to what we're in now.
Right.
And if we do it for too long, we're gonna just think this is normal. So if we ever go back to what we normally do, we're gonna have to start adapting to that again.
Right.
If you know what I'm trying to say.
I understand clearly what you're trying to say. Zachariah, what do you think? I see your mind going. What do you think?
I feel like when this whole thing is over, I feel like we're actually going to go back to normal pretty quick.
You think so? Why do you think so?
I think that everyone is so used to how we were living before that even if we were like to stop for a year, we'll probably go back to it instantly. And you know, it's also kind of sad to think of it too, because how this pandemic, people haven't been polluting, and you just know when this is done that it's gonna start right back up again. And also it's kind of interesting to see how they've adapted to this situation fairly fast. Nah, as soon as they told us that there's a virus going around and you wear masks and you clean your hands, automatically we adapted to that, and we automatically started wearing masks. We washed our hands every time. Everyone bought all the toilet paper out for some reason. But besides that, I just feel after this, we're gonna go back to our normal lives. Pollution gonna start back up again, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, and Layla, what do you think?
I just hope that, I mean, before I was saying that I wanted the coronavirus to like go away, but I don't think it's like really gonna go away totally. Because, you know, back in like March, I thought we'll start wearing this around summertime, like now, like June, July, and you know, it's right about that time, and we're still wearing them, and we have to wear them for our safety and whatnot. And I'm just thinking about this leading all the way up into the fall, because a lot of people are saying we're gonna just have to keep being cautious and wear our masks. So, I mean, I feel like this is going to become a normality for us. I just hope by next year that things could be a little smoother so I could graduate physically and not virtually.
Right.
But I mean, if it's in God's plan for it to go into next year, I mean, he got to do what he got to do.
Well, I thank you all. Our time is up. That went by really quick. I thank you all for sharing with me today. I know that we are getting closer and closer to the last day of school. And I know that this has not been easy for you as students, but I just pray that you all will continue to just be strong and stay safe. Do not take off your masks no matter what they say. I know that we are in phase 2 in New York City. Keep your masks on. As we are watching the spikes go on in the various cities of the United States of America, you want to make sure that you stay safe and keep your family safe as well. So don't take off your mask nor your gloves if you're going to go outside. And please continue to practice social distancing as much as you can. Thank you again for sharing with me today. Thank all of you out there for watching this week's edition of the Current Events class. It's truly been a blessing. I thank you for taking the time to share with us. And until we should meet again, peace out, everyone. Welcome to today's current events class. I am Sabbath Rachel Lafleur,